Chapter 1800. Back in the Medicine Valley, Zedong had been repeatedly humiliated by Yang Kai, but that place was filled with seven-colored radiant light, so Zedong had nowhere to vent his anger. Anger was like fine wine, it would ferment over time. Zedong couldn't wait to drink Yang Kai's blood and eat Yang Kai's flesh. At this moment, sitting inside the shattering void shuttle, Zedong was already imagining the wonderful scene of him capturing Yang Kai and tormenting him. Thinking of this, Zedong couldn't help chuckling wickedly. When this laughter reached Shu Wei's ears, he couldn't help shivering. He didn't know what this idiot Zedong had thought of to make him laugh so disgustingly, but Shu Wei didn't dare ask and simply poured his Saint Qi into the spirit array below him. What the hell is that? Yang Kai, who was fleeing a few thousand kilometers away, also noticed the abnormality behind him at this moment. Although he did not see the shattering void shuttle, the other party's purple light had disappeared, so it was obvious. Moreover, the distance between them was getting closer and closer. In just a dozen breaths of time, Zedong had closed 1,000 kilometers. If this situation continued, wouldn't it only take a stick of incense worth of time to catch up? Yang Kai was taken aback and his expression suddenly became ugly. For now, the only thing Yang Kai could rely on was his space force, but his space force was not inexhaustible. Just like Saint Qi and spiritual energy, it would take time to restore it if he used it too much. At this moment, Yang Kai was recovering. But seeing Zilong and the others quickly catching up, how could he have the leisure to wait? Gritting his teeth, Yang Kai took out a piece of space spirit crystal from his space ring, held it in his palm, and began to madly absorb the energy from it. This space spirit crystal was something he had found in a void crack in the severed world. It was the purest space spirit crystal, a product born from the void, completely different from the mineral lodes. A stream of pure and mysterious energy poured into Yang Kai's body, making him feel extremely comfortable. The space force in his body, which had been depleted, was being replenished at a speed visible to the naked eye. You want to compete with me in speed? I'll make you eat my dust. Yang Kai checked his condition and felt that other than the wound on his chest that still needed some time to heal, everything else should be fine. He was relieved. The power of space lingered around his body, and with a slight sway of his body, he was already several hundred miles away. In the blink of an eye, another few hundred miles had passed. Now that his comprehension of the Tao of space had reached a new height, the distance he could teleport was countless times greater than before. After using the power of space to move several times, the distance between the two sides was once again widened. What? Inside the shattering void shuttle, Zedong, who had been fantasizing about torturing Yang Kai, was startled. He almost bit his own tongue, because at this moment, he discovered something. The distance between them and Yang Kai had increased again. Even the shattering void shuttle can't keep up with his speed. Zilong's face was filled with shock. The refining method for the shattering void shuttle was obtained by one of Purple Star's ancestors from the great emperors. Although the refining level was not high enough and there were flaws in the process, as long as it was related to the great emperors, how could it be bad? Zedong had always thought that the shattering void shuttle existed within the territory of Purple Star. As the fastest artifact, there was no one or anything that could compare with the shattering void shuttle. But now, reality had slapped him hard in the face. In front of Yang Kai, who was proficient in the Tao of space, even with the power of the shattering void shuttle, they could only eat dust from afar. No, they might not even be able to eat dust. This boy must be killed as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be no end to our troubles. Zilong was horrified as a look of dread appeared on his face. The next moment, he shouted at Shu Wei, "Shu Wei, what are you still hesitating for? Why haven't you used your full strength yet?" Shu Wei's mouth twitched as his heart filled with bitterness. He was just sitting inside the spirit array, but he was already being tortured by the spirit array's power. Yang Kai felt the Saint Qi in his body being drained out like a flood. At this moment, Zilong was actually telling him to use his full strength. Wasn't this simply asking for his life? "Shu Wei, do you want to die? It turns out you haven't used your full strength yet." Zedong was furious as he glared at Shu Wei. "Young master, please calm down, young master. Old servant will go all out." As soon as Shu Wei met Zedong's eyes, he broke out in cold sweat. He knew that if he dared to argue, he would really lose his life. Zidonglai, this little bastard, was not easy to deal with. Without any hesitation, Shu Wei pushed his Saint Qi and poured even more of it into the spirit array. With a buzz, the shattering void shuttle's speed increased dramatically. "Ha, it's really fast. Let's see if you're finished this time." Zidonglai had gone completely crazy as he sat on the spot and shouted. A few thousand kilometers away, Yang Kai frowned. "It can actually speed up? Interesting. Since that's the case, let's follow from a distance. Let's see how long you can keep up. But why does this thing look so familiar? It looks like the small starship Yang refined." Deep in his heart, Shu Wei was puzzled. How could he have known that the refining method for this thing was actually passed down from Yang? It was just that Purple Star's ability to refine this starship was somewhat lacking compared to the one refined by Yang himself. The starship refined by Yang could truly shatter space. For a time, a drama of escape and pursuit played out in the Starry Sky territory. As time passed, Yang Kai's injuries gradually healed. His physique was extremely strong, and his golden blood had an astonishing restorative ability, so he didn't need to do much as the places he had been injured by the divine bird were constantly repairing themselves. If it had been any other cultivator receiving such an impact, even if they didn't die, they would have been severely injured. After his injuries healed, Yang Kai became more and more relaxed. He controlled his star shuttle unhurriedly, and when he noticed that the shattering void shuttle behind him was closing in, he would use space blink a few times to open up the distance between them. When he was far enough away, he would slow down and allow them to catch up. This kind of fishing method made Zilong and Zidonglai feel so depressed that they almost vomited blood. After so many days of chasing, both father and son were in a terrible mood, the veins on their foreheads bulging. Shu Wei had almost lost his human form. It wasn't until now that he discovered that the spirit array was not only extracting his Saint Qi, but also his source strength. A cultivator's source strength was similar to the source strength of a cultivation star. When one's source strength was consumed, their vitality would be lost, making it extremely difficult to replenish. Shu Wei had long wanted to give up. However, due to Zidong's tyrannical power, how could he dare to give up so easily? He could only grit his teeth and sit on the spirit array while taking pills to supplement his losses. All the while, he had to endure the spirit array's extraction. Today, Elder Shu, who used to be majestic and awe-inspiring in the past, had become skin and bones, and his originally black hair had turned silver-white. He looked so old that no one could bear to look at him directly. He had never expected that he, a dignified origin king, would fall into such a pitiful state. The resentment in his heart towards Zilong and Zidonglai was monstrous. Even so, Zidong was still dissatisfied with his performance and constantly cursed him for being a waste. In Zidong's opinion, the reason why the shattering void shuttle couldn't catch up with Yang Kai was all because Shu Wei was useless. If Shu Wei had been useful, they would have already succeeded and returned to Purple Star joyfully. A celebratory banquet would have been held, so how could they have followed Yang Kai's ass? "Shu Wei, take this." Zilong suddenly took out a spirit pill from his space ring and handed it to Shu Wei. Shu Wei opened his turbid eyes and glanced at it, his heart skipping a beat as he subconsciously asked, "What kind of pill is this?" This spirit pill was blood red in color. A strong bloody aura wafted towards Shu Wei's face, one that was nauseating and seemed to contain a sense of violence. Shu Wei didn't dare to take this pill lightly as he was almost at the end of his tether. Any accident could kill him. "I told you to take it, so take it. What's with all this nonsense?" Zidong shouted angrily. However, when he looked at this spirit pill, an imperceptible reluctance flashed across his eyes. Shu Wei saw this change in Zidong's eyes and immediately understood what this spirit pill was. "Grand Emperor Blood Pill," Zilong quickly said. The next moment, Shu Wei's eyes almost popped out of their sockets without any hesitation. Grabbing the Grand Emperor Blood Pill, Shu Wei stuffed it into his mouth. In an instant, Shu Wei let out a muffled groan as a rich blood and qi energy erupted from his thin body. His body seemed to be inflated as it gradually expanded. His originally dry skin also began to become rosy and his white hair turned black at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ha ha! Shu Wei laughed loudly and suddenly became lively, as if he had become several hundred years younger. Master Zilong, this Shu Wei is extremely grateful for this pill. Young master may rest assured, young master will do his best. Shu Wei said in a deep voice before immediately pushing his Saint Qi and pouring it into the spirit array beneath him. Zilong nodded lightly as a look of satisfaction appeared on his face. The Grand Emperor Blood Pill was an Origin King Grade spirit pill that only the Origin King Grade alchemist of Purple Star could refine. Even Zilong, the master of Purple Star, only had 2 of these pills in his possession. These were the only ones he had in stock for nearly 100 years, both of which were used to save lives at critical moments. Although the efficacy of this spirit pill was not as good as the legendary Immortal Source Liquid, it was still extremely heaven-defying, as could be seen from the changes Shu Wei had undergone. If not for the urgency of the situation, how could Zilong be willing to give this spirit pill to Shu Wei? However, if he wanted to activate the shattering void shuttle, Shu Wei was a key and indispensable factor, so in desperation, Zilong could only grit his teeth. Zilong believed that with the support of the Grand Emperor Blood Pill, Shu Wei would be able to hold on for a long time. As long as he could capture Yang Kai, Zilong would be able to obtain a return 10,000 times over. Shu Wei, it's up to you. If you succeed this time, this king will have his son remove your soul brand, Zilong said lightly. Shu Wei's body trembled as a look of extreme eagerness appeared on his face. Nodding, he did not say a word and went all out. He was an Origin King, but now he was under the control of a brat like Zidong, causing him to lose all faith and fear in the future. At this moment, Zidong's words had undoubtedly given him hope for the future, so he no longer held back and only hoped to catch up with Yang Kai as soon as possible to complete his task. Chapter 1801. Where did they go? Inside Starfield, Ni Guang, Gui Zhu, and Shueyu looked around. A quarter of an hour ago, they had lost sight of Zilong, his son, and Shu Wei. At that time, they only saw the flash of an artifact appear in the direction of Zilong and the others, but soon, Zilong and the others had fled. What did they use? How did their speed suddenly increase so much? Shueyu was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Now she could only chase after Zilong to determine the direction of Yang Kai, but now that she had lost track of Zilong, where was she supposed to find Yang Kai? Yang Kai carrying the immortal tree was bound to attract endless trouble, so she did not feel comfortable letting Yang Kai act alone. If she and the others rushed over, they could at least help him. The shattering void shuttle. Ni Guang's eyes flashed. It turns out that Purple Star really has something like the shattering void shuttle. I always thought the rumors were false. The shattering void shuttle? Is it very powerful? Gui Zhu asked. It's a personal artifact passed down from the great emperors. What do you think? Ni Guang glanced at him leisurely. A personal artifact of the great emperors? Gui Zhu's face changed as he muttered. That's not entirely correct. Ni Guang pondered for a moment before saying, it's a refining method passed down from the great emperors and refined by Purple Star's artifact refiners. You scared me, Gui Zhu said with some lingering fear. If it really was a personal artifact passed down from the great emperors, no one in this star territory would be able to stop it, but if it was just a refining method passed down by the great emperors, it was not so terrifying. Even so, the shattering void shuttle is the fastest artifact in the entire star territory. Now that we've lost track of them, how are we supposed to chase them? Ni Guang frowned. The star territory was so vast, only the heavens knew which direction Yang Kai, Zilong, and the others had gone. As long as they deviated even a little bit, they would be thousands of kilometers off course. Heh, fortunately, this old master had a card up his sleeve. Gui Zhu suddenly seemed to think of something and chuckled. Oh, you have a way. Ni Guang looked at Gui Zhu in surprise, his originally disappointed eyes now filled with pleasant surprise. Yes. Please wait for a moment. Saying so, Gui Zhu suddenly waved his hand and summoned out his 10,000 soul banner. Immediately afterwards, he began forming a series of mysterious hand seals. A moment later, with a serious expression, he pointed at the 10,000 soul banner and shouted, Go. The myriad soul banner shook slightly and suddenly turned into a black gas that flew in a certain direction. Follow this old master. Gui Zhu waved his hand and flew off in the direction of the 10,000 soul banner. Ni Guang followed along with Shui Yu. Not long after they left, in the originally empty territory of the star, a vague figure appeared stealthily. This person's entire body was in a translucent state. The aura and vitality fluctuations on his body were suppressed to the limit. If one didn't examine him closely, they wouldn't be able to detect him at all. This person was none other than the Elder of Galaxy Ridge, Kong Fa. Arriving at the place where Gui Zhu and the others had stopped before, Yang Kai stared in the direction they had left in, a great struggle taking place in his heart. Follow me. Or not? If he followed, with his First Order Origin King cultivation, he was afraid he would be in danger. But if he did not follow, knowing that the immortal tree was right in front of him, he was reluctant to do so. After only a moment of consideration, Kong Fa grit his teeth and quietly followed behind Gui Zhu and the others. Facing the temptation of the immortal tree, Kong Fa could not resist at all. He hoped that his luck would be good enough for him to fish in troubled waters while those masters fought to the death. The martial Dao was boundless, and the star territory was boundless. This chase between several groups of people in the boundless star territory lasted for 5 months. Yang Kai took the lead the entire time, teasing Zilong and the others who were chasing after him with a relaxed expression on his face. He had already fully recovered. It would have been easy for him to get rid of Zilong and the others. However, he did not do so. He wanted to give Zilong and the others a big surprise, so he had been running at a leisurely pace until he noticed that the shattering void shuttle behind him had slowed down. Yang Kai took the initiative to stop for a while and wait for them to catch up. Behind him, inside the shattering void shuttle, Zilong and his son were seething with anger. For 5 months, they had been unable to catch up to Yang Kai. Zilong could not believe that an origin-returning realm master could maintain such a high speed and possess such terrifying perseverance and inexhaustible strength. He had long noticed that something was wrong. Yang Kai's approach made him feel like he was fishing for a fish. Yang Kai was the fisherman, and he and the others were the stupid fish. But even if he noticed that something was wrong, Zilong could not give up so easily. Things had already reached this point, so giving up was tantamount to failure. How could Zilong accept this? As such, he grit his teeth and continued to chase after Yang Kai. Shu Wei, who had taken the Great Emperor blood pill once, had once again become a bag of bones, and this time, his situation was even more serious than the last time. His eyes had become extremely turbid and there were specks of white light within them. Sitting inside the spirit array, his skinny body was on the verge of collapse, as if he would die at any moment. Zidong scolded him from time to time, but Shu Wei did not have the strength to respond. In his current situation, an ordinary cultivator would have died long ago. Fortunately, Shu Wei was an Origin King Realm Master, so he was barely able to maintain his last breath. However, after this incident, he would definitely become a cripple and would not live for long. Behind them, Gui Zhu, who had used his secret technique, led Ni Guang and Shui Yu as they searched for Yang Kai's location while chasing after him with all their strength. Kong Fa was at the end of the group, and no one seemed to know of his existence. It's been too long. Old ghost, are you sure Yang Kai is still alive? Was he not caught by Zilong? Ni Guang asked loudly as he chased after Gui Zhu. Young boy is safe, you can rest assured. This old master left a 10,000 soul banner's co-soul in his body that day in the severed world. If he dies, that co-soul will definitely dissipate. Now, this old master is relying on the subtle connection between the 10,000 soul banner and the co-soul to determine his location. This old master is naturally certain of this. That's good. As Ni Guang spoke, he glanced over at Shui Yu and saw that she was also breathing a sigh of relief, causing him to sigh secretly. If this trip was not related to the immortal tree and Shui Yu, he would not have continued this pursuit. He had never experienced such a long chase before. Even when he was seriously injured and was being hunted down, it had only lasted a month. At that time, President Ariou had brought a large number of brothers to rescue him and slaughtered all his enemies in one fell swoop, venting his anger. Now that he thought about it, the events of 1,000 years ago were still vivid in his mind. Oh. As he spoke, Guizhu's face suddenly changed. What's wrong? Guizhu turned his head and looked at Enai Guang in amazement, slowly saying, my co-soul disappeared. What? Enai Guang was shocked. Xueyu heard this and her face also turned pale, almost fainting. Just now, Guizhu said that as long as Yang Kai was alive, his 10,000 soul banner could form a subtle connection with his co-soul, but now that his co-soul had disappeared, didn't that mean that Yang Kai? Xueyu didn't dare to think about it anymore, her eyes turning red and tears threatening to flow out. Are you sure? Enai Guang called out. Wait. Guizhu frowned and looked around, a thoughtful look on his face. Why does this damned place feel so familiar to this old master? What time is it? Why are you still studying this place? Enai Guang kept winking at Guizhu, hinting that Xueyu's situation was not good and that he should quickly say something good to smooth things over. Ha! Guizhu's eyes suddenly lit up and he laughed. This old master remembers, so it was here. Fuck. Even though Enai Guang was usually gentle and refined, he couldn't help cursing at this moment, thinking that this old ghost had a pig's brain. This old master's eyes were so bright, yet he couldn't see it. Guizhu didn't care at all and instead grinned meaningfully as he turned to Xueyu and said, Girl, don't worry, young boy isn't dead. But you just said. Xueyu looked at him worriedly. I didn't say young boy was dead, I just said his co-soul was gone, Guizhu chuckled. Just now, this old master was anxious and didn't sense it clearly. Ian, let me put it this way, the co-soul is gone, but it wasn't destroyed, rather, how should I put it? It's like if this old master was in the severed world, he wouldn't be able to sense his co-soul outside. Do you know what I mean? What are you trying to say? Enai Guang squinted at him. Haha, this old master just wants you to know that young boy isn't dead, and this old master already knows where he's going. Guizhu laughed loudly. He stretched out his hand and summoned back his 10,000 soul banner before waving his hand. Let's go, I believe Zilong is so depressed he's about to vomit blood right now. You know that too. Enai Guang didn't believe him at all. He felt that this old ghost was too unreliable. He didn't know whether Yang Kai's sect was lucky or unlucky to have him. Hehe, just wait and see. The trio continued forward. After an hour, Enai Guang's eyes suddenly shrank as he stared at a few figures standing in the void not far ahead. Who else could it be but Zilong? Perceiving the auras of Enai Guang and the others, Zilong turned his head and glared at them coldly. Staring at each other, Enai Guang laughed loudly. Haha, that bastard really has a depressed expression. I knew it, Guizhu nodded, as if he had expected this. How did you know? Enai Guang was really curious this time. He didn't succeed, so naturally he would be depressed. After chasing for 5 months, he suddenly lost track of young boy. How do you imagine he would feel? Guizhu explained faintly. Enai Guang frowned and pondered for a moment before exhaling fiercely. He feels very sullen, especially when Yang Kai is an origin-returning realm master. Damn, if I were Zilong, I would commit suicide. After saying so, Guizhu laughed gloatingly. Wait, how do you know Yang Kai escaped? Enai Guang suddenly realized something and looked at Guizhu in surprise. Because this place. I've been here before, Ian, I've been here for 2,000 years, so I know young boy escaped, and I know where he escaped to. Chapter 1802. Sigh. Enai Guang looked at Guizhu like he was an idiot. You've been here for 2,000 years, what is so good about this place that makes you so reluctant to leave? Looking around, he did not find anything special about this place. Do you think this old master wanted to? Guizhu's face suddenly became ugly. This old master was trapped here for 2,000 years. Do you know what it's like to be trapped for 2,000 years? It's worse than death. Thinking back to those 2,000 years, Guizhu couldn't help shivering. Guizhu's roar caused Enai Guang's complexion to change drastically. You were trapped for 2,000 years. Yes, so that's how it is. No wonder I've never heard of you before. It turns out you were trapped for 2,000 years. So, you've only just escaped. Ian, it's all thanks to young boy, otherwise, this old master would likely still be trapped. Guizhu nodded. This place can trap a master like you? Enai Guang looked confused. Why can't I see any danger here? This is the chaotic abyss, right? Shui Yu, who had been observing her surroundings, suddenly said thoughtfully. Little girl's knowledge is not shallow, Gui Zhu grinned. This is the chaotic abyss. What? This is the chaotic abyss. Ni Guang's face changed. The rumored extremely dangerous place in Star's territory? What's wrong, are you afraid? Gui Zhu squinted at him. Nonsense, I heard that even if an Origin King Realm Master comes here, they may die without a burial. You think I'm not afraid? Heh, the rumors aren't wrong, the chaotic abyss is usually peaceful and has no danger, but if a chaotic vortex appears and one is sucked into it, one may be crushed to pieces. Gui Zhu sneered. This old master was hunted down by his enemies and had no choice but to flee to this place to seek refuge. However, I was suddenly sucked into that chaotic vortex. That didn't kill you. You're quite tenacious, Ni Guang was shocked. This old master's life is indeed tenacious, being sucked into that vortex and trapped for 2,000 years until young boy was also sucked in, allowing him to bring me out. Gui Zhu took a deep breath. It was because of this incident that Yang Kai became acquainted with Gui Zhu. However, ever since they escaped, the two of them never met again until this trip to the Severed World. Senior, according to what you said, Yang Kai has gone to Young boy went to the place where this old master was trapped before. Gui Zhu grinned. Shui Yu's expression suddenly changed. Don't worry, don't forget what kind of power young boy is proficient in. Back then, the reason why this old man was able to escape was all thanks to him bringing this old man through the spatial crack. Since he can enter now, he must have full confidence. Moreover, once he's inside, Zilong can only watch helplessly. All we need to do is wait quietly outside. Maybe little brat Yang will run out on his own someday. Isn't it dangerous to wait here? Ni Guang worriedly said. Although the chaotic abyss was peaceful at the moment, if a chaotic vortex appeared, it would be a matter of life and death. What's there to be afraid of? Chaotic vortexes won't appear anytime soon. Gui Zhu was not afraid at all. If that's the case, then let's wait. Let me say this first. This old man has a lot of things to do in the Chamber of Commerce. We can't delay for too long. This old master will wait here for 2 months at most, Ni Guang said while quietly glancing over at Shui Yu. Although he said this to Gui Zhu, he was actually speaking to Shui Yu. Since she knew that Yang Kai had hidden inside a chaotic vortex and was no longer in danger, Shui Yu should be able to rest assured and not wait here all the time. As you wish. This old master will wait for young boy to come out, Gui Zhu chuckled. As the group spoke, they arrived not far from Zilong and the others. Zilong was in a bad mood, so when he saw Ni Guang and the others arrive, he could not help snorting coldly. Ni Guang didn't bother to respond. Before, the two of them had fought in the Severed World, neither of them could do anything to the other. Now that they had shed all pretense of cordiality, there was no need for them to exchange pleasantries, so Ni Guang separated from Zilong and the others and waited quietly. On the floating continent, Yang Kai tore through space and appeared leisurely. This place could be regarded as his first stop in Scattered Star territory. It was here that he met Gui Zhu and saw what it meant to be an Origin King. It was here that he realized just how small and insignificant he was at that time and secretly vowed to work hard to cultivate and make himself stronger. Returning here after several dozen years, Yang Kai could not help feeling a little emotional. Although his cultivation had not reached the Origin King realm yet, he was no longer a weakling. In the past, he had been easily captured by a few saints, but now, he could easily destroy 10 million saints with a wave of his hand. The floating continent was the safest haven Yang Kai could use to avoid Zilong's pursuit. Before he left, Yang Kai had left behind a trace of his divine sense deep below the floating continent, so he could follow the connection between that trace of divine sense and himself and accurately pinpoint the location of the floating continent, allowing him to use space principles to arrive here. Standing in place and taking a deep breath, Yang Kai felt both physically and mentally comfortable. He didn't know how the floating continent came to be. This floating continent wasn't very big, only about 200,000 or 300,000 miles in circumference. However, this continent was full of spirit chi and countless treasures. In the past, Yang Kai had collected a lot of Origin King grade herbs here. When he came to the floating continent for the second time, Yang Kai found that the world energy aura here was much richer than before. He did not know what mysteries this place had to offer to produce such a change. However, strictly speaking, the floating continent should be regarded as an extremely small star because it had its own world principles and its own source. If it was given enough time, perhaps it could really become a cultivation star. Could it be that all the stars in scattered star territory were born this way? Yang Kai thought about it thoughtfully but could not figure it out. Haha, someone has finally come here. Suddenly, a burst of laughter filled with excitement rang out. Yang Kai frowned and turned his head in amazement. He had not expected that there would be someone else on this floating continent. However, when he saw the face of this person, he suddenly understood. The person who spoke was someone he actually knew. Lu Gui Chen. A name that Yang Kai had almost forgotten suddenly appeared in his mind. This person was a cultivator of Purple Star. When Yang Kai was captured by Purple Star's cultivator and taken into a Purple Star starship, Lu Gui Chen was the leader. Moreover, Lu Gui Chen had placed a seal on Yang Kai's body. At that time, Lu Gui Chen was the same as Yushi of Sword Union, a second-order Saint King. In Yang Kai's opinion, he was already a high and mighty cultivator, so he was powerless against Lu Gui Chen's seal. At that time, the two great forces of Purple Star and Sword Union had a total of several hundred cultivators, but as Gui Zhu experimented with the space array, countless people died and only a few survived. In the end, when Yang Kai took Yushi, her master, Gui Zhu, and the others away from the floating continent, he did not take Lu Gui Chen with him and instead left him to his own devices. How could Yang Kai have imagined that he would see this guy again on the floating continent several dozen years later? If he had not taken the initiative to find him, Yang Kai would have almost forgotten about him. Friend, were you also caught up in that chaotic vortex? Lu Gui Chen seemed to have not spoken to anyone for several dozen years and was very enthusiastic as soon as they met, but after speaking, he frowned and stared at Yang Kai suspiciously. In the next moment, his eyes lit up as he pointed at Yang Kai and trembled. It's you, it's actually you. He obviously remembered Yang Kai. After all, it was Yang Kai who had taken Gui Zhu and the others away from this damned place while abandoning him here. Lu Gui Chen had been cursing Yang Kai all these years, so now that his enemy was right in front of him, he was naturally envious. Ha. Yang Kai chuckled lightly as he swept his eyes over him and found that Lu Gui Chen's condition was quite good. What's more, his cultivation had actually reached the second-order origin returning realm. Breaking through from the second-order Saint King realm to the second-order origin returning realm in just a few dozen years was a truly terrifying improvement. Such miraculous progress could only be attributed to the rich world energy aura of the floating continent and the precious treasures here. Just like Gui Zhu, who had stayed here for 2,000 years and broke through to the origin king realm in one fell swoop, what else could one do here besides cultivate? It's actually you. Lu Gui Chen's angry look suddenly turned into one of ecstasy. Haha, the heavens really never bar one's way. I never expected you would return one day, brat. This Lu Gui Chen's luck is truly profound. As soon as these words fell, his expression changed and became terrifying as he approached Yang Kai step by step, his Saint Chi pulsing as he viciously shouted, "Boy, obediently cooperate with this king and take this king out of this damned place, otherwise, this king will make sure you die without an intact corpse." This king? Yang Kai raised his brow and sneered, "In front of me, do you dare call yourself this king? Brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, just wait until this king captures you." Lu Gui Chen saw Yang Kai not putting him in his eyes and was furious, raising his hand to grab Yang Kai. Yang Kai stood in place, not showing any intention of dodging, instead staring at Lu Gui Chen with a strange look in his eyes. This look caused Lu Gui Chen's heart to clench as he subconsciously felt that something was wrong. It was as if he was a sheep that had dared to attack a tiger. However, now that the arrow had been narked on the bow, Lu Gui Chen had no choice but to release it. Lu Gui Chen didn't have time to think too much and rushed forward, arriving directly in front of Yang Kai, grabbing Yang Kai's shoulder and pouring his Saint Chi madly into Yang Kai's body, trying to subdue him. This little brat, it seems he's just playing tricks. Seeing that Yang Kai was easily caught, Lu Gui Chen was overjoyed. After succeeding in this move, Lu Guichen coldly shouted, "If you don't want to die, don't move. This king still has a use for your life. If you dare resist, this king can't guarantee." Scram. Yang Kai saw Lu Guichen's incessant chatter and felt irritated, pushing his Saint Chi fiercely. In the next moment, Lu Guichen's face changed greatly as he noticed that the Saint Chi he poured into Yang Kai's body was like a stone sinking into the sea, disappearing without a trace. Instead, a force burst out from Yang Kai's body that Lu Guichen couldn't resist at all, rushing up his arm and into his heart, his 5 viscera unable to resist. Chapter 1803. As if struck by a bolt of lightning, Lu Guichen's body was sent flying backwards, coughing up a mouthful of blood as he fell to the ground like a dead fish. After landing, he quickly got up and stared at Yang Kai in horror, trembling as he shouted, "This is impossible." He had not checked Yang Kai's cultivation before because in his opinion, Yang Kai's strength was definitely inferior to his. After all, this little brat was just a Saint Realm cultivator back then, while Lu Guichen had been enjoying the rich world energy and countless precious treasures on this floating continent all these years, allowing his cultivation to rapidly improve. Back then, Lu Guichen was countless times stronger than this little brat, so how could he not be his opponent now? Lu Guichen did not put Yang Kai in his eyes at all. But the moment Yang Kai's Saint Chi counterattacked, Lu Guichen realized that something was wrong. This little brat's Saint Chi was much more vigorous and pure than his own. Comparing the quality of his second-order origin returning realm Saint Chi to Yang Kai was like comparing a firefly to the moon. This made Lu Guichen unable to believe his eyes. Is this little brat already an origin king? Only now did Lu Guichen remember to release his divine sense to investigate Yang Kai. Third-order origin returning realm. After confirming Yang Kai's realm, Lu Guichen's complexion changed drastically and he fell to the ground, losing the ability to think as he muttered, "How is this possible? How is this possible?" He could not believe what he had just sensed. In just a few dozen years, this little brat in front of him had actually jumped from the Saint Realm to the third-order origin returning realm. What kind of terrifying speed and aptitude was this? Could it be that the passage of time in this damned place was different from the outside world? Even though he had stayed here for a few dozen years, it had actually been a few hundred years outside. Otherwise, how could this little brat have such a terrifying cultivation? All kinds of bizarre thoughts flashed through Lu Guichen's mind as he was completely dumbfounded. Seeing his grief-stricken appearance, Yang Kai could not help sneering, ignorant. Lu Guichen was not a master in Purple Star, so the information he had access to was limited. In fact, not to mention himself, even Jiyu Jianxin and Zidong's cultivation speed was definitely not slow. But if one really had to compare, they were still far inferior to him. After all, they all had powerful forces backing them up, so they didn't need to worry about cultivation resources. They also had many powerful cultivators to personally instruct them. On the other hand, he was the one who had wandered the entire way, relying on his own groping, occasionally meeting 1 or 2 benefactors. Only then did he receive some pointers. On this point, Yang Kai knew that he couldn't compare to the young masters of those large factions. But it was precisely because of this that he had to rely on himself to fumble around. That was why his comprehension of the heavenly Tao and martial arts was much deeper than theirs. She cast a sidelong glance at him. Yang Kai curled his lips and said, "I regret not killing you back then." Lu Guichen couldn't help shivering, his dazed eyes recovering some clarity as he coldly snorted, "What do you want?" Even if Yang Kai's cultivation was 1 level higher than his, so what? Lu Guichen felt that if he attacked with all his strength, Yang Kai might not be able to kill him easily, so after regaining his composure, his tone became much harsher. "It seems that your strength has improved quite a bit over the years. You must have taken a lot of precious treasures, right? TSK, but looking at the Saint Chi floating in your body, there are a lot of impurities in your body. It seems that you've been swallowing them raw. Do you know that this is a waste of the medicinal efficacies of those precious treasures? On top of that, eating too much isn't good for your body." Listening to Yang Kai's words, a trace of panic flashed across Lu Guichen's eyes, because he found that the other party wasn't wrong at all. These years. He had been alone on the floating continent, unable to do anything but cultivate. In the first few years, he had tried to find a way to escape from this place, but as time passed, he gave up. Even a character like Gui Zhu had been trapped here for 2,000 years, so how could he possibly escape? After thinking it through, Lu Gui Chen only wanted to improve his strength so that one day he could rely on his own ability to break through the void and escape from this damned place. To improve his strength, he naturally needed to take some precious treasures. But he was not an alchemist. Even if he collected herbs on the floating continent, he couldn't refine them, so he could only swallow them raw like a monster beast. The result of this was that the impurities of these herbs were accumulating in his body, making them extremely difficult to resolve. Now, they had begun to affect his cultivation, and every time he circulated his Saint Qi, his meridians would ache slightly. Lu Gui Chen didn't know what the consequences would be in the long run, but he knew that this was definitely not a good sign. Now that his situation had been seen through by Yang Kai, Lu Gui Chen's eyes couldn't help lighting up. You know about my condition? Do you know how to resolve it? So what if I know? Yang Kai's nostrils flared up, not putting him in his eyes at all. Teach me. Haha. Yang Kai laughed. Are you joking? I haven't settled accounts with you yet for what happened back then. Back then, he had been captured by a cultivator from Purple Star and had been sealed by Lu Gui Chen, making it impossible for him to use his Saint Qi and nearly dying. Yang Kai had never forgotten this incident. It's been so many years, what's the point of bringing up what happened back then? What's more, didn't you not die back then? Quickly teach me how to resolve this and I'll give you some benefits, Lu Gui Chen said hurriedly. Yang Kai sneered, looking him up and down for a moment before frowning. Where's your space ring? You've been here for so many years, so you must have collected a lot of precious treasures, right? Where did your ring go? How could I have a ring? Lu Gui Chen shouted. Don't you remember? Everyone's rings were taken away by Gui Zhu back then. Oh, so that's how it is, I forgot. Yang Kai suddenly realized. In order to refine a space array, Gui Zhu had taken away the space rings of everyone who had fallen here just to extract a few space spirit crystals from them. In the end, his experiment ended in complete failure. If you don't have a space ring, then you must have hidden all the good stuff away. Yang Kai looked at Lu Gui Chen and said, What do you want to do? Lu Gui Chen's face sank as he stared at Yang Kai vigilantly, as if he was looking at a bandit who was about to rob him. I'll tell you now, I did hide those things, but they were hidden in a very safe place. Without me, you won't be able to find them in your lifetime. Don't be so nervous, Yang Kai chuckled. Let me guess. In this place, the only ready-made residence is the cave mansion left behind by Gui Zhu. You should have lived there all these years. Precious treasures. Lu Gui Chen remained calm, not showing the slightest panic as he stared at Yang Kai and sneered. Precious treasures, of course, couldn't have been hidden there, Yang Kai continued. The smile on Lu Gui Chen's face disappeared in an instant, replaced by a somewhat stunned look. He hadn't expected Yang Kai to be so astute. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows, of course one can't put all their eggs in one basket, Yang Kai laughed. Mph, you think you're so smart? So what if you guessed this? Although this place isn't big, it's still easy to hide something. You won't tell me how to dissolve it. Don't even think about getting anything from me. I'm not afraid to tell you that all the useful herbs on this continent have been collected by me. If you want to harvest anything else, it'll take at least 100 years, Lu Gui Chen finished speaking and continued, you also stayed here for a while in the past. You should know that there are many Origin King grade herbs produced here, but the medicinal efficacies of those herbs are too strong for me to dissolve with my strength. As long as you meet my requirements, I can give you everything I have. Are you threatening me? Yang Kai looked at him calmly and coldly snorted, Fine, I won't waste my breath with you. I just don't want to waste those herbs, that's why I'm telling you so much. Since you're so stubborn, then, please die. There were indeed a lot of good things on the floating continent, and Yang Kai didn't want to waste them, so he tried to trick Lu Gui Chen, but now that he saw how difficult it was to deal with him, he gave up. In any case, his harvest from this trip to the Medicine Valley of the Severed World was already big enough, so the herbs on the floating continent were just icing on the cake. Saying so, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and summoned 2 golden blood threads. The golden blood threads twisted mid-air and transformed into 2 strange monster beast forms. These were the blood beasts Yang Kai had condensed in the severed world, the tail-crowned snake and star-king turtle. These 2 monster beasts were both peak 9th order beasts. Although after condensing them into blood beasts, their strength had declined somewhat, after all, they had a solid foundation, so it wasn't difficult for them to deal with a trivial second-order origin returning realm Lu Gui Chen. As soon as the blood beasts appeared, they rushed towards Lu Gui Chen with a monstrous bloody aura. What are these? Lu Gui Chen was shocked as he stared at the 2 fierce blood beasts in horror. He couldn't recognize what kind of creature these 2 monster beasts were and shouted, "Boy, do you really want to kill me? Aren't you afraid those treasures will disappear from this world along with me? You think they're treasures, but in my eyes, they're nothing more than dispensable things." Yang Kai chuckled, not caring at all. Lu Gui Chen really panicked this time. He thought that Yang Kai would care about those Origin King grade herbs, so he dared to talk terms with Yang Kai without fear, but now it seemed that the life-saving treasures he had been relying on were nothing. Facing the terrifying auras of these 2 blood beasts, how could he remain calm? Neither of these 2 blood beasts was something he could contend with. "Young man, wait, if you have something to say, let's talk." Lu Gui Chen quickly retreated to avoid the attacks of the tail-crowned snake and star emperor turtle while shouting, "This Lu is willing to offer those treasures with both hands. Please spare my life, young man. What were you doing earlier?" Yang Kai remained unmoved and spat out a single word, "Kill, ****, roar." The tail-crowned snake and star emperor turtle attacked Lu Gui Chen from both sides, and as the aura of death rushed towards him, Lu Gui Chen cried out in horror, "Don't kill me. I can tell you a big secret, a secret about this continent. If you can obtain it, your future achievements will be limitless." Yang Kai's brow furrowed, and with a thought, the 2 blood beasts stopped moving. At this moment, the tail-crowned snake's fangs were less than a meter away from Lu Gui Chen and the star emperor turtle's tail swept towards him, but upon perceiving Yang Kai's order, it quickly changed direction and flew over his head. As the wind blew, Lu Gui Chen broke out in a cold sweat. He had just walked through the gates of hell. Chapter 1804. Lu Gui Chen, who had just escaped with his life, felt his whole body go limp as sweat dripped down his back. "If you dare lie to me, I'll make sure you can't die even if you want to." Yang Kai stared at Lu Gui Chen coldly. "Speak, what is the secret of this continent?" Lu Gui Chen's face went pale as he gulped, looking at Yang Kai pleadingly. "Can you make these 2 monster beasts retreat first?" 2 pairs of blood-red eyes stared at him, causing his heart to beat wildly. The feeling of his life hanging by a thread was really uncomfortable. Yang Kai coldly snorted and issued a command in his mind, causing the tail-crowned snake and star-king turtle to immediately transform back into golden blood threads and fly back to Yang Kai. Lu Gui Chen couldn't help wiping his cold sweat as he glanced over at Yang Kai and found him looking at him impatiently, quickly asking, "If I tell you this secret, can you guarantee you won't kill me? Your life isn't as valuable as you think. Killing you or sparing you is only a matter of thought for me, but whether or not the secret you tell me is valuable depends on it." Valuable. Lu Gui Chen's body shook. "This king, ***cough***, I can guarantee with my life that you will definitely be interested in this secret." "Enough nonsense. Keep talking and you'll die." "Yes, yes, yes." Lu Gui Chen trembled and said quickly, "If I tell you that this continent has given birth to its own source strength, would you believe me?" "Source strength." Yang Kai's eyes lit up as a terrifying light flashed across them, quickly asking, "How do you know?" "I've been here for several dozen years." Lu Gui Chen smiled bitterly. "One day a few years ago, while I was in retreat, I suddenly felt that the world energy fluctuations on this continent were somewhat abnormal. At the same time, a vague message came from underground, so I thought it was the birth of some kind of treasure. So I released my divine sense to investigate, but how could I have known that as soon as I released my divine sense, it would be pulled in by that strange force? At that time, I saw a dazzling light that gave me the feeling of a newborn baby. It was curiously trying to get in touch with me, but when I wanted to see what was going on, it rejected me. At that time, I didn't know what it was. After thinking about it carefully, I felt that it should be the origin of this continent. As for whether it is, I don't dare to be too sure. He quickly finished his story and then looked at young Kai anxiously. Origin. Haha, it seems that it really is the origin. Young Kai laughed loudly. Back when he was on the floating continent, he had inadvertently entered the depths of the floating continent's underground. There, he saw a ball of glowing energy. The energy was enormous, but young Kai didn't know what it was. At that time, his strength was not high, and he was powerless against that ball of energy. However, he was careful and attached a strand of his psyche to the ball of energy. It was thanks to this thread of thought that young Kai was able to accurately pinpoint the position of the floating continent and return here. At this moment, hearing what Lu Guichen said, young Kai immediately determined that it was definitely the origin. If the floating continent was a small cluster of stars, then what Lu Guichen and he saw back then was the origin of stars. It was just that the stars young Kai saw back then were still growing and had not been fully born, while what Lu Guichen saw was the origin of stars that had just been born. If this floating continent was left to its own devices, in the future, it really might have a chance to become a real cultivation star. Young man, Lu Guichen looked around and didn't know how young Kai planned to deal with him, so he asked nervously. Stay there and don't move. If you dare to act recklessly, you're dead. After young Kai finished speaking, he sensed the location of the divine sense thread he had left behind several dozen years ago, his figure flickering as he prepared to leave. But soon, he turned back and threw a ring to Lu Guichen, store all your collection over the years. As soon as these words fell, he disappeared. Lu Guichen took the space ring he hadn't seen for a long time and stood in place, staring at the spot where young Kai disappeared with wide eyes. It was only after a long time that he recovered and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, a look of lingering fear on his face. He didn't even know how Kai Yang had managed to escape. From the looks of it, the gap between him and Kai Yang was simply immeasurable. It was laughable that he had thought that if he fought with his life on the line, he would at least be able to injure Kai Yang. If he had really done so, he would have died without a complete corpse. After a long time, Lu Guichen flew off in a certain direction dejectedly, preparing to put all the good things he had collected over the years into his space ring. Although precious treasures were good, one needed to be alive to enjoy them. Now that young Kai's fist was bigger than his, how could he dare resist? Deep underground, young Kai spent a great deal of effort to break through. This place should be at least 10,000 kilometers from the surface, but here, there was an empty space. At the center of this space, there was a mass of glowing energy that exuded a soft glow. It was the same mass of energy that young Kai had seen several dozen years ago. However, at this moment, it seemed to be smaller and more condensed than before, and when young Kai arrived here, this mass of energy gave off a strong repulsive force that seemed to want to push him out of this space. Young Kai stood in place calmly. No matter how strong this repulsive force was, he didn't move. Staring closely at this glowing mass of energy, young Kai wore a look of joy and muttered, "It really is a star source." He was the Star Master of Shadowed Star and had refined the star source of Shadowed Star, so he naturally had a certain level of authority in this regard. Although this massive star source on the floating continent was very different from the star source on Shadowed Star, there was no doubt that it was a star source. The power it contained was terrifying and not something a human could resist. Haha, it actually merged with the divine sense thread I left behind. Doesn't that mean it's mine now? Young Kai observed for a while and couldn't help getting excited. He didn't know what had happened, but the divine sense thread he had left here all those years ago had actually merged with this star source as it grew. In other words, this star source had been branded with his own brand. No wonder this source strength was so terrifying, but it couldn't affect me at all. So this is the reason. Young Kai suddenly understood. The next moment, young Kai's body trembled with excitement. This massive star source already had its own brand, so refining it would definitely be very easy. If he could refine it, wouldn't he become the master of this floating continent? He was already the master of Shadowed Star. If he became the master of this floating continent, he would be the master of 2 stars. This kind of thing had never happened in the entire territory of Shadowed Star for tens of thousands of years. Even those third-order origin kings couldn't refine the star source of 2 cultivation stars. The thought in Yang Kai's mind made him extremely excited. He had truly experienced the benefits of becoming a star master. Star masters and cultivation stars were closely related, sharing both honor and disgrace. If a cultivation star was strong, the star master would benefit, and if a cultivation star was weak, the star master would run out of resources. And vice versa. The floating continent was a small cultivation star that had been born not long ago and had infinite possibilities for growth. As long as he could refine its star source, as it grew in the future, he would benefit endlessly. Thinking so, Yang Kai could no longer suppress his fluctuating mood. He released his divine sense and tried to communicate with the star source in front of him, but found that it did not respond. After thinking about it for a while, Yang Kai felt relieved. This star source had just been born, so it was like a newborn, so how could it react? Let's refine it first, Yang Kai muttered to himself before sitting down cross-legged. Forming a seal with his hands, Yang Kai closed his eyes tightly and in the next moment, a pure spiritual energy spread out from his body. Spiritual energy visible to the naked eye seeped out and transformed into Yang Kai's appearance. This was Yang Kai's soul avatar. If one wanted to refine the star source of stars, their soul had to leave their body. Only by fusing with the star source could this be done. Therefore, refining the star source of stars was extremely dangerous, and the slightest carelessness could result in death. Those third-order origin kings would not dare to do this if they were not completely confident. This was also within shadowed stars' territory. This was because star masters were rare. In the endless flowing time Great Emperor, there were many invincible third-order origin kings who died in the process of refining the star source of stars. If it weren't for the floating continent star's star source having just been born and not being very powerful, and if it weren't for his divine sense threads branding it with his brand in advance, Yang Kai wouldn't have dared to act so carelessly. This wasn't like refining shadowed star's star source. At that time, Yang had helped him, so there was no danger, but this time, he had to rely on himself. Fortunately, Yang Kai had a good grasp of this because he had the star refining art. The star refining art he had obtained from the Emperor Garden was a secret technique specifically designed to refine the star source of stars. His little senior sister had relied on this secret technique to become the star master of Tongxian realm. His soul avatar flickered and rushed into the star source in front of him. There was no hindrance throughout the entire process, and Yang Kai felt as if he was wrapped in a mass of warm water, making him feel extremely comfortable. This made him overjoyed. Sure enough, it was because he had branded it with his mark, so this ball of source power did not reject his spirit. It seems that things will go smoothly, Yang Kai thought to himself. Silently refining the star refining art, Yang Kai began to refine the star source. As time passed by, the source of light began to flicker, and a mysterious aura began to rise and fall. The whole process went unbelievably smoothly, and when his soul avatar reached a certain level of compatibility with the star source, Yang Kai changed his hand seal and began to pour the star source into his body. As long as he could absorb this star source into his body, he could complete the refinement and become the star master of this floating continent. But at that moment, another force suddenly erupted from Yang Kai's body, one that was far stronger than the star source of the floating continent. Under the interference of this force, the originally docile star source of the floating continent became chaotic and was no longer under Yang Kai's control. Not good. Yang Kai exclaimed as he opened his eyes and changed his hand seals again. In the next moment, his soul avatar returned to his body. *WA. With a loud sound, Yang Kai coughed up a mouthful of blood, his lungs in turmoil, and his face as pale as paper. Taking a few deep breaths, Yang Kai suppressed the tumbling Saint Qi and vitality in his body. Looking at the star source in front of him, Yang Kai frowned. How could this be? Chapter 1805. Refining the star source of the floating continent had gone quite smoothly in the early stages, and Yang Kai had only needed to guide the star source into his body to complete the task, but now he had failed at the last step. Yang Kai's face sank as he recalled the scene just now and frowned. Could it be that two star sources can't coexist in my body? At that moment, Yang Kai clearly felt the shadowed star's source in his body erupt, like a bird protecting its nest, forcing the floating continent's source back into its body. This was what caused Yang Kai to suffer a backlash. The strength of a star source affects the principles of heaven and earth. A single cultivation star can only have one kind of world principle, let alone one's body. I have refined Shadowed Star's star source and am closely connected to Shadowed Star's principles, so I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to accommodate another star source. Yes, that must be the case. Yang Kai's thoughts flew, and after a short time, he figured out the root of all this. Although this was just his own speculation, he believed it was correct. It was precisely because he had already refined Shadowed Star that he was unable to refine Tongxian Realm's star source this time. It seemed that the reason there had never been a master of 2 stars in Tongxian Realm territory was not because those origin kings were not strong enough, but because it was simply impossible. After realizing this, Yang Kai felt a great deal of frustration. This situation was like a person who was clearly hungry but could not fill his stomach with anything, a truly frustrating situation. Was he going to let go of this heaven-sent opportunity? Without even mentioning the fact that Tongxian Realm's star source had only just been born. It was extremely easy to refine, so he had already put his soul brand into this star source, fully meeting the prerequisites for refining it. This kind of thing could be said to be extremely rare, so Yang Kai was unwilling to give up on this star source in front of him. However, his body could no longer accommodate another origin source, so there was nothing he could do. Yang Kai sat in place, healing himself while racking his brain for a way to get the best of both worlds. After thinking for a long time, he still could not come up with a good idea. He scratched his head anxiously, leisurely. He seemed to have thought of something, and his anxious and irritable eyes gradually became clear and bright. After pondering for a while, he could not help laughing. Idiot! How stupid! How could I not have thought of this? Yang Kai patted his head with his palm. It was as if he had gone mad. In the next moment, he waved his hand and summoned the stone mongoose and summoned the firebird. Master's orders. As soon as Liu Yang appeared. As usual, he asked a question. You two, take a look at this thing in front of you, which one who can swallow it? You to him, Yang Kai was to himself. The stone puppet and Liu Yang had always been his most powerful helpers. Both of them now had the combat power to fight Origin Kings alone, so if they could devour this star source, they would definitely grow even stronger. Since he could not refine it himself, it was better to let his 2 helpers try. If they succeeded, it would be of great help to him. Hearing this, Liu Yang turned her head to look at the source, but in the next moment, a look of dread flashed across her beautiful eyes as she said in amazement, Master, although I don't know what this thing is, I'm afraid I don't have the ability to swallow it. There is a profound aura about it that surpasses mine. If I try to swallow it rashly, I will be destroyed by it. That's principle. Yang Kai nodded and explained. Liu Yang was an artifact spirit, so she was not very knowledgeable and could not recognize the source of the stars, but she had her own instincts. Like a beast, she knew what was dangerous to her and what was not. The source in front of her gave Liu Yang a very dangerous feeling. The power of principle was unfathomable, so how could Liu Yang dare to swallow it wantonly? Not only Liu Yang, but even Xiao Xiao, who had always been simple-minded, was staring at the source in front of him with a pair of small eyes at this moment, but he did not move. If it were before and Yang Kai allowed him to swallow something, he would have already rushed forward and swallowed it whole. In any case, with his innate divine technique, he was not afraid of indigestion. But now, he had stopped because he felt threatened by the source of the stars. Last time, it was able to devour the origin of the Ore Star because the Ore Star was dead and the origin had collapsed. Only a trace of it remained, which was not harmful to it. That was why it was able to succeed. But now, the origin of the floating continent was complete. Although it had just been born, it was not something that Tiny could touch. Seeing them like this, Yang Kai immediately knew that they were powerless and said, "In that case, you can go back." With a wave of his hand, he put Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang away again. Another golden stone mongoose reappeared in front of Yang Kai. Stone mongoose doppelganger. Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang could not do anything about the source, but Yang Kai was not worried because he still had his doppelganger. The reason why he called Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang out first was that Yang Kai wanted them to get some benefits so that they could grow up as soon as possible. Since they could not do anything, it was time for his doppelganger. His body could not accommodate two sources, but it should be fine to use another body, right? Moreover, his doppelganger was attached with a wisp of his doppelganger, which was equivalent to another doppelganger. It should be able to fit perfectly with the brand of the source. He released his doppelganger and poured it into his doppelganger. The doppelganger's turbid eyes suddenly became bright. Yang Kai controlled his doppelganger, sat down in front of the source, and repeated the action just now, performing the star-refining spell. Time passed little by little, and the expression on Yang Kai's face was extremely dignified. Although he felt that his idea was not wrong, before the results came out, he did not dare to be too sure. If even his doppelganger could not refine the source of the stars, he could only reluctantly give up the benefits at hand. When the time came, he would let his friends and family try to refine it and see if they had the opportunity. However, that would have to wait until they became stronger, at least reaching the Origin King realm. Only the heavens knew how long that would take. At a certain moment, Yang Kai, who was paying close attention to the movements of his doppelganger and the source, raised his brow as a look of ecstasy appeared on his face and he could not help laughing. At this moment, the source of the stars in front of him was being slowly and subtly drawn into his doppelganger, without the slightest sign of rejection. Success. My idea was right. The reason why my body could not refine this source was because it was impossible for two types of origins to coexist in a single body. After changing to a new body, this problem was easily solved. The doppelganger was equivalent to another doppelganger, and the doppelganger becoming the Star Master of Tongxian Realm was equivalent to him becoming the Star Master of Tongxian Realm. Although this was somewhat opportunistic. But this way. He was the master of two stars. TSK. If this matter were to spread, it would likely cause a sensation throughout star territory. Yang Kai was in a good mood and quickly held his breath, not daring to show the slightest carelessness. He paid close attention to the movements of his doppelganger. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner, and once the source was completely poured into his doppelganger, the process would be complete. But this is a bit slow. Yang Kai was greatly dissatisfied. According to his estimation, it would take at least 1 to 2 months for his doppelganger to completely refine this source. Back then, he had become the master of Shadowed Star in the blink of an eye. However, that was because Yang Inflammation had directly delivered Shadowed Star's source to him. The two could not be compared at all. Forget it, let's start the alchemy furnace. Waiting here with nothing to do, Yang Kai stood up, formed a seal with one hand, and space force gushed out from his body, disappearing in an instant. There was no need to pay attention to his doppelganger now, so it was only a matter of time. Yang Kai was too lazy to wait any longer, so he decided to take advantage of this time to refine a few furnaces of pills. Now that his cultivation had reached the peak of the Origin Returning Realm, Yang Kai had felt an opportunity to break through in the Severed World, but at that time, the situation had changed rapidly, so he had forcibly suppressed it. The floating continent was extremely safe, and the world principles were complete, making it a perfect place to break through. Yang Kai wanted to use alchemy to stimulate his breakthrough. The harvest from the Severed World this time was not small. After a while, Yang Kai arrived at a certain spot on the floating continent, released his divine sense, and scanned the area slightly before moving to his left. After a dozen breaths, Yang Kai appeared again. Lu Gui Chen, who had been waiting here, was startled, but after seeing Yang Kai's face, he quickly ran over and held up the space ring with both hands with a flattering smile on his face. "Young man, everything is inside, please take a look and see if you are satisfied." After seeing Yang Kai's methods, Lu Gui Chen was now as obedient as a rabbit, so how could he show the slightest disobedience? Yang Kai responded faintly before grabbing the space ring and sweeping it with his divine sense. Suddenly, he raised his brow and looked at Lu Gui Chen with a smile. "You've had a good harvest these years." "Ha ha." Lu Gui Chen laughed dryly. "I had nothing to do here, so besides cultivating, I could only wander around." "And then you collected all the precious treasures you saw?" "Young man is wise. Idiot." Yang Kai angrily cursed. "Ah." Lu Gui Chen raised his head in amazement.
Stupid.
Yang Kai's face went pale. You are an origin-returning realm master, but don't you know that collecting precious treasures at will without a proper method of preservation will cause their medicinal efficacies to fade? Look at the herbs in this space ring. Some of their medicinal efficacies have already faded by half. How am I supposed to use them? You're as stupid as a pig. Kai Yang really wanted to die from anger. There were indeed a lot of herbs in this space ring, and many of them were origin king grade, but because they were not properly preserved, too much of their medicinal efficacies had faded, greatly reducing their value. Any alchemist who saw this scene would likely fly into a rage. Lu Gui Chen was scolded, but he didn't dare say anything, only able to smile awkwardly. Yang Kai sighed, knowing that this matter couldn't be blamed on him. If he had a space ring, the medicinal efficacies would not have faded so much, but at that time, everyone's space rings had been taken away by Gui Zhu. Gui Zhu also had to bear some responsibility for this. Chapter 1806. Although some of the medicinal efficacies of these herbs had already faded, there were still a lot of them, so it was not a small harvest. You didn't hide anything, did you? Yang Kai squinted at Lu Gui Chen. I wouldn't dare. Lu Gui Chen was taken aback and quickly waved his hands. Now that he was under the eaves, how could he dare let Yang Kai find fault with him? Quickly swearing an oath, if he dared to hide anything, he would be struck by lightning. Good, there's nothing else for you to do here. Withdraw. Yang Kai waved his hand impatiently. Lu Gui Chen, on the other hand, stood in place and stared at Yang Kai expectantly, seemingly wanting to say something but hesitating. What else do you want? Young man, that source, is that something you can ask? Yang Kai's face sank as a cold light flashed across his eyes, sending out an invisible wave of spiritual energy. Lu Gui Chen was hit hard in an instant, his knowledge sea defenses instantly torn apart, causing him a splitting headache as he staggered back, his face pale. After suffering this blow, Lu Gui Chen was shocked and immediately knew that his previous guess was not wrong. If Yang Kai really wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as slaughtering a chicken or a dog. Looking up, there was no trace of Yang Kai in front of him. He had already left at some point. Smiling bitterly, Lu Gui Chen quickly sat down cross-legged and began circulating his secret art to heal his wounds. Somewhere on the floating continent, with beautiful scenery, Yang Kai appeared. The scenery isn't bad, this is it, Yang Kai muttered to himself before releasing a few blood beasts and having them spread out to guard the surroundings. Although Lu Gui Chen was the only outsider on the floating continent right now, and Yang Kai was sure that he would not dare to disturb him, there was always a possibility. As long as he released a few blood beasts to guard him, Yang Kai would be able to rest easy. Immediately, Yang Kai summoned the purple origin furnace he used for alchemy and began looking for herbs in his space ring. What kind of pill should I refine? Yang Kai scanned his space ring with his divine sense. The main reason he was performing alchemy this time was to stimulate his breakthrough, so it didn't matter what kind of pill he refined. All he needed to do was to use alchemy to integrate himself into this world. Purple sun grass. The 100-leaf lotus. There were even hollow fruits. Now that he had all of them, he could refine the Tao comprehension pill. I can use it to consolidate my cultivation after my breakthrough. Yang Kai quickly made his decision. The main reason was that he had all the materials needed to refine the Tao comprehension pill. Now that he had all of them, it was the most convenient. After taking out the various herbs one by one and arranging them beside him, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and formed a seal before pointing at the purple origin furnace. Yang Kai poured his conflagrated spiritual energy into the purple origin furnace in an instant, causing its temperature to rise sharply. Yang Kai methodically threw one medicinal herb after another into the pill furnace while the size of his conflagrated spiritual energy was constantly changing. Yang Kai's alchemic Tao was originally taught by the true alchemic way, and he had also received some pointers from Tongshen Continent's Old Man of Heaven's Keep. Later on, he learned the true alchemic enlightenment scripture, and everything he learned was one of the best alchemy techniques. In addition, he would occasionally discuss the Tao of alchemy with Xia Ning Chang. As such, he had considerable attainments in the alchemic Tao. All kinds of seals were constantly sent into the purple origin furnace, and one spirit array after another appeared and disappeared inside the furnace. Yang Kai's expression was extremely focused as he gradually abandoned all distracting thoughts and devoted himself to alchemy. His aura also began to merge with the world around him, as if his whole person had become a part of it. Refining a spirit pill was a complex process. It wasn't just a simple process of condensing medicinal liquids and allowing them to interact with one another inside the pill furnace. What kind of heat to use, what kind of spirit array to inscribe, what kind of alchemy technique to use, every step had to be carefully considered. If one made a single mistake or grasped the right timing, it was possible to fail the refinement, and even if one succeeded, the quality of the pill would not be too high. Alchemy was a Tao that required one's mind and perseverance. Yang Kai had a conflagrated spiritual energy. In terms of alchemy, he had excellent conditions, so the time and energy he needed to refine pills was much shorter than that of ordinary alchemists. In particular, coupled with the restorative effect of the 7-colored soul-warming lotus and his powerful spiritual energy, he could use his conflagrated spiritual energy unscrupulously. Time passed slowly, and a rumbling sound came from the purple origin furnace as various precious medicinal liquids interacted with one another and underwent a magical transformation. A faint fragrance floated out of the furnace, one that was refreshing, a sign that the pill was beginning to condense. Yang Kai's face became more dignified, and with a wave of his hand, a blood beast standing guard in the distance transformed into a golden blood thread and flew back to his hand. The golden blood thread, like a wisp of golden and red smoke, danced at Yang Kai's fingertips. As it danced, the golden blood thread gradually transformed back into a golden light while the red color was removed and condensed into a red mist. From the mist, the faint roar of a monster beast could be heard, and from time to time, the mist would transform into the shape of a monster. Don't make trouble. Using you for alchemy is the best way for you to go. Behave. Yang Kai reached out and grabbed the red mist, chuckling. The red mist seemed to have sensed that something was wrong, and not only did it not calm down, it instead became even more restless. Yang Kai coldly snorted and directly threw the red mist into the pill furnace. The last sentence of the true alchemy enlightenment scripture stated that only when a pill had a spirit could it be called a spirit pill. Yang Kai pondered for a long time before he finally understood what this meant. It was impossible for a medicinal pill to gain sentience for no reason, unless it had been stored for too long and placed in an environment with extremely dense spiritual energy. Only after countless years would something like a pill spirit be born. Since it was impossible for a pill to gain a spirit for no reason, then all he had to do was to infuse it with spirituality. The best way was to use the monster beast's monster core as a pill spirit. The monster beast's monster core contained the essence of the monster beast, so it was the best pill spirit. Although Yang Kai did not have a high-grade monster core, he had a blood beast. It could also be used as a pill spirit. This time, he was refining an origin king-grade spirit pill, so a pill spirit was essential. Yang Kai could only use the blood beast. Although this would reduce the number of blood beasts by 1, compared to the enlightenment pill, it was clear which was more important. The blood mist was thrown into the purple origin furnace, and in an instant, an earth-shattering sound rang out, as if an incredible chain reaction had occurred inside the furnace. You still want to resist? Yang Kai's face darkened as he formed a series of hand seals to suppress it. As expected of the ninth order monster beast soul, it took Yang Kai a few dozen breaths of time to completely stabilize it. The strange fragrance flowing in the air seemed to have become even stronger. Dong dong dong, at the same time. Yang Kai felt the Saint Qi in his body begin to fluctuate, giving off a powerful pulse. Is it coming? Yang Kai's eyes flashed as he knew that his actions had stimulated his Saint Qi and he was on the verge of a breakthrough. But now, the pill was about to be refined. Yang Kai did not want to give up halfway. Quickly forming a series of hand seals, Yang Kai began to use the pill condensing technique recorded in the true alchemy enlightenment scripture, forming different hand seals and sending them into the purple origin furnace. The movement inside the furnace grew louder and louder until Yang Kai had formed hundreds of hand seals. Suddenly, a rolling sound came from inside, as if something was rolling about inside the purple origin furnace. Rise. Yang Kai shouted as he slammed his palm onto the purple origin furnace. The next moment, 3 streaks of light suddenly flew out from the purple origin furnace. These streaks of light flew off in 3 different directions. Haha, you want to run? Wishful thinking. Yang Kai laughed as his figure flickered and appeared directly behind one of the pills. Grabbing this pill, Yang Kai didn't even look at it before stuffing it into a prepared jade bottle. Immediately after, he did the same thing and put the second and third pills into the bottles. Refining 3 pills at a time was already the consensus of all alchemists in the territory of the Starfall Star. Even famous alchemy grandmasters. No matter how skilled one's alchemy was, one set of materials could only refine a single pill. But in Yang Kai's case, this common sense was broken. The ancient alchemy technique recorded in the true alchemy enlightenment scripture was really amazing. Perhaps in ancient times, those almighty alchemists practiced alchemy like this, but with the passage of time, the alchemy enlightenment scripture had disappeared. Such a miraculous alchemy technique had already been lost, leading to the fact that in the end, all alchemists could only use one set of materials to refine one spirit pill. Rumble. In the sky, a muffled thunderous explosion rang out. Kai Yang raised his head to look at the sky, only to see a mass of dark clouds gathering above his head. Like a quilt that had not been washed for 100 years, it weighed heavily on his head, making his chest feel stuffy. Inside this black cloud, there was a terrifying aura of destruction, as if it could destroy this floating continent. This was only the beginning. A huge amount of world energy was constantly pouring into the black cloud, expanding its size. Yang Kai's face became dignified. This time, he was breaking through from the Origin Returning Realm to the Origin King Realm, so the upcoming world energy baptism would definitely be different from before. After observing for a moment, Yang Kai waved his hand and tossed out countless saint crystals before immediately sending out a punch, sending out his saint chi towards these saint crystals. Explode for me. With a rumble, tens of millions of saint crystals exploded into dust mid-air, and the world energy contained in the saint crystals splashed out in all directions, filling a large area. In the blink of an eye, the richness of the world energy within a 10-kilometer radius around Yang Kai suddenly rose to a whole new level. Breaking through required a large amount of world energy, and although the floating continent was rich in world energy, Yang Kai still did not dare to lower his guard and did not hesitate to explode tens of millions of saint crystals to nourish the environment around him. Although the world energy was already abundant, Yang Kai did not stop. With a wave of his hand, a number of hexagonal stones containing profound Tao were scattered around his body. There were more than 100 of these stones, and they resonated with each other from a distance. Gradually, the power of a domain was formed in this area. Territory stones. Yang Kai had distributed a number of territory stones to his closest relatives, but he still had a lot left over. Now that he was about to break through to the Origin King Realm, of course, he would not be stingy. Yang Kai hoped to absorb the energy contained in these territory stones while he was breaking through, improving his perception and understanding of his territory. He then waved his hand and released his blood beast, as well as the stone mongoose, Xiao Xiao, and Liu Yang, ordering, "All of you spread out, within a 30-kilometer radius, kill anyone who dares to approach." Yang Kai did this mainly to guard against Lu Gui Chen. If this little brat was unwilling and decided to disturb him while he was breaking through, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the next moment, the blood beasts and the stone mongoose scattered. Before leaving, artifact spirit Liu Yang stared at the black clouds in the sky with a look of dread on her face. She could feel how terrifying this world energy baptism was, and even with her current strength, she did not dare say she could easily block it. Chapter 1807. What happened? What's going on? Is this damned place about to be destroyed? Lu Gui Chen stumbled towards the place where Yang Kai was breaking through. He had only been healing himself for a while, but when he opened his eyes, he suddenly found that the atmosphere of the entire floating continent had undergone a drastic change. Thunder was rolling in the sky, black clouds covered the sky, and the world energy aura was becoming more and more active. He was completely dumbfounded and had no idea what was going on. All he could do was follow the source of the commotion and try to find out what was going on. As he flew, He saw that the black cloud in the sky was getting bigger and bigger. Moreover, inside the black cloud, there were constantly pitch-black lightning bolts shuttling back and forth, as if a ferocious and terrifying flood dragon was hiding inside, and suddenly poking its head out. This scene made him tremble with fear. After flying 100 kilometers, Lu Guichen's vision blurred as a strange blood-red monster beast suddenly appeared in front of him. Lu Guichen was taken aback and quickly stopped because he saw that the blood beast's eyes were filled with malicious intent, as if it was warning him not to move forward. He believed that if he moved forward, this blood beast would definitely launch a thunderous attack towards him. The blood beast came from Yang Kai, this he naturally knew, so Lu Guichen thought about it for a moment and understood that the current situation on the floating continent was definitely related to Yang Kai. Is it because he is refining the star source of the stars? Lu Guichen made some wild guesses in his heart, but he still couldn't figure it out. After thinking about it for a moment, he flew up into the air and stood on a high vantage point before looking forward. Yang Kai's figure immediately entered his eyes, even though he was still 30 kilometers away. However, Lu Guichen was now a second-order origin returning realm master, so his eyesight was quite good. The scene 30 kilometers away was clearly visible. This isn't a breakthrough, right? Lu Guichen exclaimed in shock, his whole body trembling. Yang Kai was a third-order origin returning realm cultivator, so if he broke through, wouldn't that mean he would break through to the Origin King realm? When the words Origin King realm appeared in Lu Guichen's mind, it was like a giant bell ringing, causing him to almost fall from the sky. Origin King realm. That was the strongest fighting force in the territory. Lu Guichen could hardly believe that he would one day be able to witness a cultivator breaking through to the Origin King realm with his own eyes. He bit his tongue fiercely as he felt the pain. He wanted to make sure that he wasn't dreaming or hallucinating. A few dozen years ago, an Origin King realm master was an unreachable existence in his eyes. A casual glance from an Origin King realm master was enough to shatter his soul. Even today, after several dozen years, Lu Guichen understood the terror of an Origin King realm master. Because as one's strength improved, one could more and more understand what the Origin King realm was like. This kid is so young. Was he going to break through to the Origin King realm just like that? When he first met him, he was only at the Saint realm, and he could easily imprison him. The past was like smoke, but it was still vivid in his mind. If he could succeed in breaking through this time, he would definitely become the youngest Origin King realm master in the entire star territory, and there was no guarantee he would never surpass him. It was definitely unprecedented, and such an achievement could be said to be world-shaking. Lu Guichen bit his tongue again, put away the wild thoughts in his heart, flew to the ground, and sat down cross-legged. He knew. Such a scene was definitely an opportunity for him. Observing an Origin King breaking through at such a close distance was not something one could encounter casually. If he could comprehend something from this baptism of the heavens and earth, then his cultivation in the future would be smoother. So, Lu Guichen made a prompt decision and decided to sit back and watch. The power of the black clouds in the sky grew stronger and stronger, and when the atmosphere reached a certain peak, there was a sudden cracking sound and a jet black light flashed in the sky. This jet black light was like the birth of a dragon, falling from the sky and bombarding a certain place down below. Immediately, Yang Kai's muffled groan rang out, and the entire ground shook a little. This. Lu Guichen was shocked and exclaimed, so terrifying. Every time a cultivator broke through to a new great realm, they would experience a world energy baptism. This was a test of the world principles for the cultivator. If they succeeded, their cultivation would advance greatly, but if they failed, their realm would regress or they would die. As an origin returning realm master, Lu Guichen had naturally experienced more than one or two world energy baptisms. When he broke through to the origin returning realm here, it was only 20 to 30 years ago. However, the strength of the world energy baptism at that time was not even 1/10,000th of the power of the jet black lightning in front of him. And this was only the first baptism. The following baptisms would only become stronger and more terrifying. If it were me, would I be able to survive? Lu Guichen couldn't help imagining things, putting himself in Yang Kai's shoes and imagining himself facing such a terrifying baptism when he was just a third-order origin returning realm cultivator. The result was, he couldn't, absolutely couldn't. Even if he was lucky and managed to survive the first strike, the second and third strikes would be enough to take his life. Thinking so, Lu Guichen's aura suddenly became chaotic and the martial Tao he had always persevered in the depths of his heart began to falter. Catcher. The second baptism fell, and although the jet-black energy from this baptism struck Yang Kai several dozen kilometers away, the destructive aura it emitted pierced straight into Lu Guichen's heart. With a loud cry, Lu Guichen coughed up a mouthful of blood and his entire body deflated like a deflated balloon. His cultivation began to decline at a speed visible to the naked eye. Second-order origin returning realm, first-order origin returning realm, third-order Saint King. Finally, it stopped at the second-order Saint King realm. There was a saying that if one didn't seek death, they wouldn't die. Lu Guichen wanted to observe Yang Kai's breakthrough in order to obtain benefits, which was certainly not wrong, but what he didn't know was that every world energy baptism Yang Kai underwent was different from that of ordinary people. The world energy he had to welcome was several times more powerful than any other cultivator. This time, he was at the threshold of breaking through to the Origin King realm. Even Yang Kai himself was afraid of this baptism, let alone a trivial Lu Guichen. Lu Guichen had overestimated himself and put himself in Yang Kai's shoes. This was a disaster he had brought upon himself. One's heart of martial Tao should only grow stronger with every setback. Only then would one be able to progress further. Lu Guichen doubted himself and his heart of martial Tao was naturally shattered by the destructive aura, causing it to collapse. The reason he was able to survive was mainly because his heart of martial Tao had collapsed too quickly. If he had persisted any longer, he would likely have died on the spot. Sitting in place stupidly, Lu Guichen could no longer think of anything else. Even when his cultivation fell back to a few dozen years ago, he didn't seem to be able to react. His eyes were filled with darkness, without a trace of light. At the same time, outside the space where the floating continent was located, in the chaotic abyss, the masters from all sides had been waiting for a long time, but there was still no trace of Yang Kai, causing Zilong and his son to become impatient and irritable. Guizhu, on the other hand, was relaxed and carefree. Although Xueyu had received Guizhu's assurance, she was still worried and leaned over to ask softly, "Senior, it's been almost 10 days, why hasn't there been any movement? What kind of movement do you want?" Guizhu glanced over at her with a grin. He's perfectly safe hiding there, but if he really makes a move, wouldn't he be in trouble? Do you want him to run out now? No, Xueyu quickly waved her hand. As long as he's safe, I can rest assured, but don't worry, I know what you're worried about. This old master can assure you, okay? That damned place can trap this old master for 2,000 years, but it can't trap Yang Kai. When he wants to come out, he'll naturally come out. This little girl is very concerned about him. When he comes out, this old master will carefully convey your concern. Senior. Xueyu blushed and stamped her feet repeatedly. I can't wait long, Enai Guang frowned. There are a lot of things to deal with in the Chamber of Commerce, so this old master can't stay here for long. At that time, if this old man leaves, will you be able to fight against Zilong by yourself? Looking down on me? Guizhu coldly snorted, Zilong is nothing but a fart. Even if you don't care about Zilong, if that little brat Yang Kai comes out, Shu Wei and Kong Fa will definitely target him. You can't split yourself up, so what can you do? Guizhu frowned. This was what worried him the most. If Enai Guang left and Yang Kai came out, Zilong would have 3 Origin Kings on his side. Guizhu would be able to entangle Zilong and Yuan Qi while Shu Wei was injured, but could Yang Kai deal with Kong Fa? Now that Kong Fa was also standing on Zilong's side, only the heavens knew what benefits Zilong had promised him. What a headache. What Guizhu hoped to see the most now was Yang Kai hiding inside until it was safe to come out. He did not believe Zilong would be able to guard this place forever. After all, Zilong was the master of Purple Star, how could he have so much free time? Enai Guang suddenly frowned and stared at a certain spot. This is Something's wrong, what's going on? Guizhou also muttered. On the other side, Zilong, Shu Wei, and Kong Fa, the three origin kings, also discovered the abnormality of the chaotic vortex at the same time. A certain part of space was trembling uneasily, as if void cracks were forming, and from these cracks, an extremely violent power was leaking out. What's going on? Enai Guang looked puzzled as he turned to Guizhou, hoping he could explain. What are you looking at this old master for? Guizhou coldly snorted. Although he had been trapped on the floating continent for 2,000 years, he did not understand what was happening in front of him. Could it be the chaotic vortex is about to appear? Shueyu asked in surprise. When these words came out, both Guizhou and Enai Guang jumped in fright. The chaotic vortex was not something they could casually rush into, and if it really did appear, they would have to flee for their lives. Guizhou had been sucked into the chaotic vortex and not died back then, but that was pure luck. He did not want to try it again. If his luck was bad and he was torn apart by the chaotic vortex, he would have no place to cry. Chapter 1808. Look. Shueyu suddenly pointed again. There seems to be some kind of movement there. Through the faintly discernible cracks in the space, some incredible scenes were vaguely imprinted in everyone's eyes. Why does it look more and more like that damned place? Guizhou almost bit his tongue. Although the cracks were extremely small and unstable, Guizhou was still able to see what looked like a floating continent. Is this the place Yang Kai entered? Shueyu asked in surprise. If this old master is not mistaken, it should be. But, did you hear anything? Guizhou looked at Enai Guang and Shueyu. Shueyu shook her head, but Enai Guang wore a dignified expression as he nodded and said, there is a faint sound of thunder, and the aura coming from this crack. Is that little brat trying to break through at this moment? You mean, this is all caused by the world energy baptism? Guizhou's expression changed. Doesn't seem like it. Enai Guang asked. It does, but that damned place and this damned place are two different spaces. Even if Yang Kai is breaking through to the origin king realm, there shouldn't be such a big disturbance, right? Guizhou's mouth twitched as he too was stunned. Others may not be able to create such a disturbance, but Yang Kai was different. He was proficient in the Tao of space, so if he was really breaking through to the origin king realm, it was possible that the two spaces were converging. If that's the case, that boy is in danger, Enai Guang quickly said. What do you mean? Shueyu was shocked, her pretty face going pale. This energy is too terrifying, I don't know if he can resist it, Enai Guang frowned and replied. If one could not resist breaking through to the origin king realm, the consequences would be very serious. This was different from the early stages of a cultivator's breakthrough. When a cultivator was weak, even if they failed to break through to a great realm, it would not be a big problem. But once one reached the origin king realm, once one failed, there were undoubtedly only two outcomes, severe injury or death. The latter had an 80% chance of happening. Enai Guang, Guizhou, and the others were shocked. On the other side, Zilong, Shu Wei, and Kong Fa were also pointing in the same direction and coming to the same conclusion. Yang Kai may be breaking through to the origin king realm. Zilong's face suddenly turned ashen. He wasn't afraid that Yang Kai would succeed in breaking through, because even if Yang Kai really did reach the origin king realm, he would only be a first-order origin king. Yang Kai didn't put such a person in his eyes. What he was afraid of was that Yang Kai's breakthrough would not succeed. If this brat died inside, where would he go to find the immortal tree? That bastard. Zilong was so angry that he cursed loudly, but he could only sigh helplessly. In the space of the chaotic abyss, all kinds of strange phenomena continued without end. Everyone was on tenterhooks, fearing that something bad would happen to Yang Kai. This situation continued for an entire day before the fluctuating space gradually stabilized, and the faint sounds of muffled thunder gradually dissipated. Did he succeed? Shueyu was as anxious as an ant on a hot wok, wishing she could rush into the floating continent to see what was happening. Enai Guang and Guizhou looked indifferent. Neither of them spoke. At this time, the result was undoubtedly clear, but they could not infer whether Yang Kai had succeeded or not, so they could only wait anxiously. On the floating continent, where Yang Kai had broken through, the surrounding 100 kilometers had been razed to the ground and a huge crater had appeared. At the very center of this crater was a black figure. A dark figure, sprawled out on the ground. If it wasn't Kai Yang, then who else could it be? A burnt smell filled the air. This time, I've gone too far. Yang Kai looked up at the deep sky, the corners of his mouth twitching as he felt pain all over his body. It was as if all the bones in his body had been broken and his flesh and blood had been reduced to dust. Even the slightest movement affected his nerves, causing him so much pain that he almost cried out. The world energy baptism for breaking through to the Origin King realm. Yang Kai had never expected to be so violent. Throughout his cultivation journey, every time he broke through a great realm, he had passed through it safely, but this time, he had almost lost his life. Even his 5 elements indestructible sword body was almost shattered by the world energy, and in the end, he had been forced to use his dragon transformation secret technique in order to survive. At this moment, Yang Kai's dragon transformation secret technique had not yet disappeared, and his right arm was now covered in dragon scales. His right hand had also transformed into a dragon claw, but even this dragon claw had been badly damaged and badly mangled. Although it was a bit miserable, Yang Kai couldn't help grinning when he sensed his current realm. The Origin King realm. After so many years, Yang Kai had finally set foot in the territory of the Origin King realm. Feeling the surging power in his body and feeling the completely different comprehension of the heavenly way and martial Tao, Yang Kai felt that this time's suffering was worth it. Going from the Origin returning realm to the Origin King realm was like stepping into a completely new world. After only a short rest, Yang Kai climbed up from the ground, endured the pain all over his body, grabbed a handful of pills from his space ring, and without even checking what they were, stuffed them into his mouth and began chewing. Unity of mind and soul, Dantian. This was undoubtedly the best time to consolidate his cultivation, and Yang Kai was not willing to miss this opportunity. The dragon scales receded from his right arm and a faint golden light began to appear. The wounds on Yang Kai's body began to repair themselves at a speed visible to the naked eye, and as his physique pulsed, powerful fluctuations of power began to appear. The golden light grew stronger and stronger until eventually, the place where Yang Kai was standing was completely enveloped in golden light, making it impossible to see his figure. The activity of the golden blood in his body was countless times more intense than before. A day later, the golden light dissipated, revealing Yang Kai's strong body. His exposed skin was covered in blood, but Yang Kai only needed to lightly shake it to reduce this blood to a fine powder, revealing new skin underneath. Oh, an enlightenment pill. Yang Kai suddenly remembered something and quickly rummaged through his space ring. A moment later, he took out a jade bottle and poured out the 3 pills inside. They were none other than the 3 enlightenment pills he had refined before. One of them even had pill veins, while the other 2 had no pill veins, but their quality was still extremely high. You're the one. Yang Kai picked up the enlightenment pill with pill veins and stuffed it into his mouth, absorbing its medicinal efficacies while using it to comprehend the true essence of the martial Tao. The aura on his body became purer and more condensed, and a martial Tao concept that seemed to resonate with the heavens and earth spread out. After half a month, Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes and exhaled softly. His eyes were flat, as if he was just an ordinary person, and even the violent fluctuations of Saint Chi he had released after his breakthrough had been completely suppressed. Not bad. Although my realm hasn't been completely consolidated, it's not much different. Yang Kai muttered to himself as he sent out an invisible force with his divine sense, spreading it outwards with him as the center. In an instant, the space within a 1,000-meter radius suddenly became viscous and dignified, and void cracks began to appear in this space, as if some invisible beast was opening its maw. His territory. After breaking through to the Origin King realm, Yang Kai's Sha had finally transformed into a territory. What's more, this territory had been integrated with his space force, making it much stronger than the territory of an ordinary Origin King realm master. In this territory, he was the master. As such, it was very easy for an Origin King realm master to kill an Origin returning realm master. The Sha of an Origin returning realm master could only affect others, but in this territory, an Origin King realm master could do whatever they wanted. With a thought, the territory disappeared and Yang Kai looked around before flying high up into the sky, silently calling out to his blood beasts and the stone mongoose, Liu Yang. A moment later, all the blood beasts flew back and transformed into golden blood threads before returning to his body, as did the stone mongoose. Only Liu Yang, after observing Yang Kai for a moment, said, "Congratulations, Master, for breaking through to the Origin King realm. Haha, I was lucky." Yang Kai chuckled lightly, thought for a moment, and said, "You can rest assured, I will help you improve your strength as well." Liu Yang's eyes lit up and she respectfully said, "Many thanks, Master." As an artifact spirit, although she had already refined the original body crafting furnace to her heart's desire, it was absolutely not a simple matter to increase her strength. Unless there was something like the heaven-scorching lightning fire for her to devour, it would be very difficult for her to improve. However, with Yang Kai's assurance, Liu Yang was completely relieved. Because Yang Kai had the sun's true essence, as long as she could devour some of the sun's true fire, her strength would not remain stagnant. "Good, you go back to the sealed world bead first. I've already placed the sun's true essence there. Swallow as much as you can, don't be greedy." "Yes." Liu Yang was overjoyed and her figure flickered before disappearing. The next moment, she appeared in the sealed world bead and quickly found where the sun's true essence was. Immediately transforming into her firebird form, she flew towards the sun's true essence. After dealing with this, Yang Kai turned his head and looked in a certain direction, frowning slightly before his figure flickered and he appeared a few dozen kilometers away. Lu Gui Chen was still sitting there, but his face was pale and dispirited. After noticing Yang Kai's arrival, he glanced up at him and smiled bitterly. "Overestimating yourself." Yang Kai shook his head. He naturally knew why Lu Gui Chen had become like this. Although he had been constantly breaking through, that did not mean he was ignorant of the outside world. On the contrary, Lu Gui Chen's collapse from the world energy baptism was something he had seen clearly from beginning to end. A cultivator, whether it was a physical injury or a spiritual energy injury, no matter how serious, had a way to recover, but if a cultivator's martial heart and will collapsed, even the great emperors would be powerless to do anything about it. Because this was his own fault, only by strengthening his own beliefs could he possibly recover. Yang Kai was not familiar with Lu Gui Chen, and there was even a gap between them. Not killing Lu Gui Chen was already being fair, so how could he have the leisure to comfort him at this moment? So, after just glancing at him, Yang Kai no longer paid any attention to him. The next moment, Yang Kai spread out his divine sense and extended it towards the interior of the floating continent. He wanted to see how his embodiment was progressing in refining the star's source. Chapter 1809. Yang Kai was looking forward to his embodiment refining the star source, because if he really succeeded, he would become the first master of 2 stars in the history of star territory. A trivial title was one thing, but the key was the various benefits of becoming a star master. After breaking through to the Origin King realm just now, Yang Kai could clearly feel that his connection with Shadowed Star, which was hundreds of millions of kilometers away, had become much closer. What's more, with the improvement of his cultivation, Shadowed Star must have also received significant nourishment. There was no doubt about this, but as for the specific situation, Yang Kai would have to return to Shadowed Star to investigate. Yang Kai released his divine sense and silently perceived the state of his embodiment. In the next moment, his face changed dramatically and he quickly flew up into the sky to look down at the floating continent. A moment later, his body shook and he exclaimed in shock, "What's going on?" Yang Kai stared down at the floating continent below in disbelief, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Things had progressed beyond his expectations and imagination. He never expected that such a thing would happen while his embodiment was refining the star source of the stars. It was not that his embodiment's refinement was not going smoothly. On the contrary, Yang Kai could sense that his embodiment was progressing extremely smoothly. At some point, his embodiment had completely refined the star source into its body and become the star master of the floating continent. The embodiment's aura had also soared. However, this was not the key though. The key was that his embodiment had actually merged with the entire floating continent. In his perception, The entire floating continent below had become his embodiment. Looking into the distance, at one end of the floating continent, Yang Kai could see a vague blurry head. Vaguely, a huge blurry head could be seen. Although it wasn't fully formed, it was already in its embryonic form. On both sides of the floating continent, there seemed to be signs of arms being born. At the other end, there were traces of 2 legs. The current floating continent was like a giant that lay dormant in the void. Gudong. Even though Yang Kai was used to seeing great storms, at this moment, he could not help gulping as cold sweat dripped down his forehead. What's going on? Yang Kai only felt that his mind was in chaos. Nothing he knew or saw could explain this strange scene. Yang Kai took a deep breath. He calmed himself down. He closed his eyes and carefully sensed the situation of his avatar. His avatar was still underground, and it didn't appear to have changed much, but it had indeed fused together with the entire floating continent. Furthermore, under the interference of the Dharmakaya's will, this continent was actually changing its shape according to its own form. The divine technique of the Stone Mongoose clan, it wants to devour and refine the entire floating continent. Yang Kai was shocked when he heard the information in his mind. What kind of shocking feat was this? Even though the floating continent wasn't very large, it still had a circumference of 200 to 300,000 kilometers. If the Dharmakaya could really use the Stone Mongoose's innate divine technique to refine it, it would become a towering stone giant. Such a huge stone giant gave off a strong sense of oppression, and even an Origin King Realm Master would likely have no choice but to flee in the face of such a force. Just think about it, if a fist bigger than a mountain smashed down, who could possibly survive? No way. Yang Kai still felt like he was in a dream, both surprised and overjoyed. He was surprised because the Dharmakaya's actions had exceeded his expectations, but he was overjoyed because if it succeeded, he would have another great helper, one that would be even more powerful than Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang. The Dharmakaya's will represented his own, and although it was only a soul clone controlling it, since it had made such a move, it meant that everything was still under his control. Circulating his secret art, Yang Kai calmed himself down. He also wanted to see if the Dharmakaya's actions could succeed or if it was just a pipe dream. Hong long long. A loud buzzing sound suddenly rang out from the floating continent as the earth shook violently. As the ground shook, a rhythmic thumping sound rang out from inside the floating continent, like a beating heart. With each beat, large chunks of land would be shaken into dust and dissipate into the void. Countless crisscrossing gullies appeared on the ground all of a sudden. It was as if doomsday was coming, and the entire floating continent seemed to be on the verge of falling apart. Yang Kai's expression suddenly became solemn as he silently observed for a moment. Soon, he relaxed as he knew that this was the process of refining the floating continent, and the shattered land was nothing more than useless impurities. Anything that was even slightly useful had been preserved and swallowed and refined by the Dharmakaya. Refining an entire continent, even if it was only 200,000 or 300,000 kilometers in size, was originally impossible, but the Dharmakaya was the stone mongoose, which had the divine technique to swallow and refine impurities. Now that it was the star master of the floating continent, it was the master of this place. With all kinds of convenient and preferential conditions, it was able to carry out such a magnificent feat. I'm looking forward to it. Yang Kai found that his Dharmakaya had given him a huge surprise and could not help feeling a little excited. Dong dong. The extremely rhythmic sound continued to ring out as the continent began to split faster and faster. The entire continent began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the huge head and limbs that Yang Kai had seen before also slowly became clear. At this rate, it would only take 1 or 2 days for the Dharmakaya to be completely refined. Yang Kai stood above the void and quietly observed for several days. After confirming that everything was under the Dharmakaya's control, he was completely relieved. With nothing else to do, Yang Kai summoned the sealed world bead and directly entered the sealed world bead. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai soon felt Liu Yang's aura. At this moment, she was in retreat somewhere, and the place she was in was exuding an extremely terrifying scorching aura. It seemed that she had swallowed a wisp of sun's true fire and was in the process of refining it. Even with her current strength, Refining a wisp of sun's true fire was not easy, but once she succeeded, her strength would increase. Yang Kai did not call out to her and instead took out the immortal tree from his space ring. This 3-meter-tall sapling had a few green leaves, but on one of these leaves was a drop of milky white dew-like liquid. Immortal source liquid. It was a sacred healing medicine that could regenerate flesh and bones and bring the dead back to life. Yang Kai took out a jade bottle and carefully collected this drop of immortal source liquid. Immortal source liquid was originally born on the immortal tree, so as long as it was born, it could be collected, so Yang Kai's actions had no effect on the immortal tree. According to the legends, the entire body of the immortal tree was a treasure. Regardless of whether it was the green leaves or the roots, they all contained an extremely surging vitality energy. If one could refine the entire immortal tree, one could even achieve an immortal and indestructible body. To live as long as the heavens and return as the earth, to exist eternally and eternally, to be undying and indestructible. The lifespan of a third-order origin king was only a few thousand years, and if they took good care of themselves, they could live up to 10,000 years. However, the immortal tree could make a cultivator immortal and indestructible. Yang Kai's breathing could not help becoming rapid. Staring at the immortal tree for a long time, Yang Kai suddenly scratched his head. He had no idea how to refine the immortal tree. This was a legendary supreme treasure, even more precious than his own 7-colored soul-warming lotus. How was he supposed to refine it? The treasure was right in front of him, but Yang Kai could only look at it, making him feel depressed. Tilting his head and thinking about it, Yang Kai tried to use his divine sense to collect the immortal tree. After all, he had done this when he collected the soul-warming lotus. Since it was also a supreme treasure, there was always a possibility of trying. But no matter how Yang Kai urged his divine sense, the immortal tree did not respond. He then tried urging his Saint Chi to refine it. A few days later, Yang Kai was dejected. During this time, he had tried everything he could think of, almost swallowing the immortal tree whole, but he was still unable to refine it. Swallowing it whole was also not appropriate. Only the heavens knew what kind of incredible changes would occur after eating this kind of thing. Forget it, I'll go back and ask Young Inflammation. Her divine technique is quite profound, so she should know something about it. Yang Kai could only give up for now. After exploring the sealed world bead for a while, Yang Kai chose a spot and replanted the immortal tree. This supreme treasure was full of vitality, so there was no need to worry that it would not survive after being planted. Even if it was placed on a dead star, it would still be safe and sound. The immortal tree settled down in the small sealed world and an unimaginable vitality spread out from it. In just a short time, Yang Kai felt that the small sealed world was even more vibrant than before. The trees seemed to have received great nourishment and were growing rapidly. Even this part of the world seemed to have been mended, becoming more complete and perfect. Seeing this scene, Yang Kai's brow rose and he quickly took out the precious treasures he had harvested in the severed world and carefully replanted them around the immortal tree. What made Yang Kai overjoyed was that these precious treasures actually quickly adapted to the soil, and each of them exuded a joyful aura. It seems I can make a medicine garden around the immortal tree. Yang Kai mused. The reason why the medicine valley in the severed world was so rich was entirely because of the immortal tree. With the nourishment of the vitality exuded by the immortal tree, these precious treasures could grow rapidly. Now that the immortal tree had settled in the small sealed world, as long as it was operated properly, another medicine valley could be formed here. Considering all this, Yang Kai took out the herbs Lu Gui Chen had given him, found a few origin king grade herbs that seemed to be on the verge of death, and planted them. A few days later, these few stalks of medicinal herbs actually came back to life. One had to know that these herbs were all collected by Lu Gui Chen a long time ago and had lost most of their medicinal efficacies, so it was basically impossible for them to grow again, but the immortal tree had such a heaven-defying function. Ha ha ha. Yang Kai was overjoyed. Although he had not been able to refine the immortal tree and achieve an immortal and indestructible body, this accidental discovery was still a big gain for him. Immediately, Yang Kai began busying himself in the small sealed world. Chapter 1810. More than a month later, Yang Kai looked at the large piece of land in front of him with a joyful expression. Centered around the immortal tree, he had already planted many spirit grasses and medicines. Regardless of what condition these spirit grasses and medicines were in before, under the nourishment of the immortal tree's vitality, they had all survived. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, a medicine garden had been formed. It seems that if I collect anything in the future, I can plant them here and take them when I need them. This way, I can preserve the integrity of the medicinal efficacies to the greatest extent. Yang Kai was very happy. Next, Yang Kai scattered countless saint crystals and crushed them into powder with his fist, allowing the energy contained in these saint crystals to fill this space. Although the immortal tree's vitality was abundant enough to nourish this mysterious small world, the spirit grasses and medicines planted here required world energy to grow. In the future, saint crystals would not be a small expense. After doing all this, Yang Kai took some time to investigate the situation of the floating continent. During this time, Yang Kai had been inspecting it from time to time and found that the refinement process of his embodiment was extremely smooth. Now, the entire floating continent had shrunk by more than half, and the stone giant that stood in the void had revealed its towering body, giving off an extremely strong sense of oppression. However, the further it progressed, the more difficult it became to refine it. Yang Kai did not know how the embodiment would eventually refine the floating continent. Yang Kai did not worry too much about this though, and instead sat cross-legged in the middle of the medicine garden, sniffing the medicinal fragrances coming from all directions before taking out a round, rolling object from his space ring. The shocking void beast's monster core. The reason why he agreed to go to the severed world with Luolan was because he wanted to obtain the shocking void beast's monster core. Shocking void beasts were ancient exotic beasts. They were naturally proficient in the Tao of space and were of unimaginable help to a cultivator like Yang Kai who cultivated the Tao of space. In the severed world, Yang Kai had refined the void vortex, greatly increasing his mastery of space force. If he could obtain the mysteries contained in the shocking void beast's monster core, he would definitely be able to advance further. Taking out the purple origin furnace, Yang Kai summoned his conflagrated knowledge sea. He wanted to refine the shocking void beast's monster core into a spirit pill. This way, he could maximize the amount of energy he absorbed from the monster core. Fortunately, there was an ancient pill recipe recorded in the True Alchemy Enlightenment scripture, which was refined using the shocking void beast's inner core as the main ingredient. Moreover, he didn't lack other supplementary materials. Time flew by. Another 2 months passed. Outside the floating continent, Guizu's brow furrowed tightly, his expression not very good as he muttered to himself. Ever since he had sensed Yang Kai's advancement, he had never felt anything like it. More than 3 months had passed. But until now, Yang Kai did not appear either. Could it be that he really failed to advance and died under the baptism of the heaven and earth energy? That would be the envy of the heavens. At this moment, Guizu stood alone in the void. His heart was restless. After all, he had just promised Yang Kai to join High Heaven Sect and was preparing to use the abilities of High Heaven Sect's Origin King Grade Alchemy Grandmaster to improve his strength. If Yang Kai died, where would he go to find High Heaven Sect? He didn't even know where High Heaven Sect was. Ni Guang and Shui Yu had already left 2 months ago. Ni Guang had many things to do, so it was impossible for him to wait here forever. After waiting for so many days without any results, he could only return to Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce for the time being. Shui Yu wanted to stay, but how could Ni Guang feel assured leaving her here alone? Even with Guizu's help, it was impossible. In the end, despite Shui Yu's strong objections, Guizu took her away. Dead or alive, come out and tell me. Guizu jumped up and down anxiously, wishing he could rush into the floating continent again to see what was going on. On the other side, Zilong and the others were very patient and had been waiting. But at this moment, their expressions were also very ugly. They felt that Yang Kai must have fallen, otherwise, how could he have been hiding all this time? Whether Yang Kai died or not, they didn't care, but the immortal tree was on him, that bastard. Zidong cursed bitterly. Brother Z, Brother Shu, this Kong will take his leave first. Kong Fa thought for a while before saying to Shu Wei and Zilong. He really didn't have the patience to continue wasting time here. Shu Wei glanced at Kong Fa with dim eyes and opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything and just sighed. After having his source strength extracted by the shattering void shuttle, Shu Wei had almost died. Even after a few months, he had not been able to recover, and at this moment, he looked like a lamp that was about to run out of oil. Shu Wei ignored him, so how could Zilong pay attention to him? He just snorted lightly. Kong Fa didn't want to embarrass himself, so he just smiled awkwardly and summoned his star shuttle to leave. But at that moment, a sudden change occurred. In the originally tranquil starfield, an unusual fluctuation of power suddenly appeared. Kong Fa's body suddenly froze in place as he stared towards the source of this fluctuation in amazement, his brow furrowed. The next moment, the fluctuations of power grew stronger and stronger, and in less than 3 breaths, a vortex appeared. Sigh. Chaotic vortex. Kong Fa was shocked, and the faces of everyone else also changed greatly. Even Gui Zhu and Zilong hurriedly pushed their Saint Chi, preparing to escape at any time. A figure suddenly emerged from the vortex. Chem! Zidong shouted as he stared carefully at the figure, immediately shouting excitedly, "He's out, he's out, that bastard is out." Who else could the figure who emerged from the vortex be but Yang Kai? In an instant, everyone's eyes became fiery hot, enough to pierce through space. "Little brat, you really didn't die." Gui Zhu laughed, the black chi around his body fluctuating, revealing the excitement in his heart. "Since you've come out, come with this old master." As soon as Zilong saw Yang Kai's face, he immediately took action. His body glowed with a purple brilliance as he arrived in front of Yang Kai and grabbed him with one hand, saying, "A precious treasure like the immortal tree isn't something a little tramp like you can possess. Daring to touch my sect's sect master, have you asked this old master's permission?" Gui Zhu coldly snorted, his figure transforming into a black chi that instantly blocked in front of Yang Kai. The 10,000 soul banners, 10,000 ghosts roared. A pure and evil aura emerged and rushed straight into Zilong's mind. Chumph, petty tricks. Zilong remained motionless as the purple light around his body became more and more dazzling. Gui Zhu's black chi was forced to retreat again and again. Jie. Looking down on this old master? You think too highly of yourself, Gui Zhu snorted lightly, his 10,000 soul banner transforming into a black curtain that wrapped around Zilong. What? Zilong was shocked. He had never fought with Gui Zhu before, and although he knew the other party was a second-order origin king, not much weaker than himself, Zilong only realized this after they fought. This old man was even more difficult to deal with than Ni Guang. "Young boy, hurry up and run." Gui Zhu's voice came from the black curtain. "This old master will block for you for a while, run as far as you can." Ah! Everyone is quite patient. After Yang Kai walked out of the vortex, he looked around. Soon, he understood the situation in front of him. However, he stood there with a calm expression on his face. He had no intention of running away immediately. "Want to run?" Zidong's face flashed fiercely as he waved his hand. "Shu Wei, capture him for me." Although Shu Wei looked like he had been tortured beyond recognition, he was still an origin king. But in any case, he was still an origin king, and a thin camel was still bigger than a horse, so Zidong naturally had to make him work harder. Shu Wei did not dare to disobey and rushed towards Yang Kai with a cold face, roaring ferociously, "It's all because of you, bastard. If it weren't for you, how could this old master have fallen into such a state?" The reason he was subdued by Zidong was mostly because Yang Kai had launched a sneak attack on him in the Severed World, causing him to suffer serious injuries. Otherwise, how could he have been so easily subdued by Zilong? Which origin king realm master was not extremely arrogant? How could one be willing to be a slave and be ordered around by another? Especially when the one ordering him around was an origin returning realm brat. If it was just this, it would have been fine, but later, while chasing Yang Kai, Shu Wei had a large amount of his source strength extracted by the shattering void shuttle, causing him to age rapidly. All of this was because of Yang Kai. Shu Wei did not dare to vent his anger on Zilong and Zidong, so he could only transfer his resentment to Yang Kai. As such, after hearing Zidong's order, Shu Wei immediately rushed up and did not hesitate to use all his strength in his current state. The void trembled as the full-powered blow of an Origin King Realm Master was no trivial matter, capable of piercing through space itself. Shu Wei wanted to take Yang Kai's life. In any case, Zilong and Zidong only cared about the immortal tree. It didn't matter whether Yang Kai died or not, as long as they killed him, they could obtain the immortal tree from his space ring. With a dazzling flash of light, Shu Wei's entire body seemed to transform into a small sun as he crashed down above Yang Kai's head. Zidong could not help narrowing his eyes as a trace of dread appeared on his face. During this time, his attitude towards Shu Wei could be said to be extremely bad, but Shu Wei did not dare to complain because his brand was under his control, causing Zidong to think that the so-called Origin King Realm was nothing more than this. But after seeing Shu Wei's full-powered blow, Zidong realized that there was a problem with his mentality. Such a blow could kill a dozen of him in an instant. That bastard is dead for sure. Zidong thought to himself, secretly pleased. After getting rid of his biggest competitor in the future, only Shui Yu and Jiyu Jianxin could compare to him. In the future, if he could suppress Shui Yu and Jiyu Jianxin, he would become the king of the younger generation in Star Territory. As he thought about this, Zidong's lips curled into a cold smile. Secret technique, exile. A faint voice suddenly spat out from Yang Kai's mouth. Facing Shu Wei's earth-shattering blow, his expression remained unchanged and he didn't even try to dodge, instead raising his hand and sending it towards Shu Wei. This hand exuded a mysterious fluctuation of power that grew larger and larger in Shu Wei's eyes, as if it had transformed into a world that obscured the light in his eyes, leaving him with only darkness and chaos. What? Shu Wei exclaimed in horror. The dazzling light was instantly annihilated and Shu Wei stood not far in front of Yang Kai in a daze, staring at the scene in front of him in disbelief, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. He had no idea what had just happened. His all-out attack had clearly been launched, but Yang Kai remained unscathed, not even a hair on his head messed up. It was as if his blow had struck a completely different space. Chapter 1811. Thinking of this, Shu Wei suddenly broke out in a cold sweat as he stared at Yang Kai with a dignified expression. His intuition told him that Yang Kai was definitely not simple. It could be seen from his performance in the Medicine Valley of the Severed World. If he was a simple cultivator, how could he have resisted Zilong's blow? At this moment, he had easily resolved his full-powered attack. This little brat, Shu Wei, swept Yang Kai with his divine sense in surprise and his complexion changed drastically as he cried out in shock, You really broke through to the Origin King Realm. What? Zidong's face suddenly went pale as he stared coldly at Yang Kai, as if he wanted to pierce through his body and kill him with his gaze. Origin King Realm. This bastard has actually reached the Origin King Realm. He broke through to the Origin King Realm one step earlier than me, earlier than Shui Yu, earlier than Jiyu Jianxin. In the Star Territory, the three young talents had been left behind by him. It was laughable that Zidong had always fantasized about one day suppressing Shui Yu and Jiyu Jianxin and becoming the leader of the younger generation. This bastard in front of him had silently achieved the goal he had worked so hard to achieve for so many years. Unforgivable. In this world, no one but me can do this. Zidong suppressed the anger in his chest and roared with a ferocious expression, Shu Wei, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill him. Hearing Zidong's shout, Shu Wei finally reacted and said with a solemn expression, Boy, you are the most talented and terrifying young man I have ever seen. If possible, this old master would like to make friends with you, but since young master has given the order, you must die today. You talk too much nonsense. Yang Kai glanced at him coldly and spat disdainfully. Shu Wei coldly snorted, You just broke through to the Origin King Realm. You should consolidate your cultivation properly. Running out so impatiently is simply courting death. This old master will show you what a real Origin King is. As soon as these words fell, Shu Wei suddenly opened his territory. All of a sudden, Yang Kai was covered in it. Shu Wei smiled triumphantly and walked towards Yang Kai step by step. Saying lightly, he declared, "in this territory, this old master can dominate everything, including your life. Are you the only one with a territory?" Yang Kai snorted and stretched out his hand. "I have one too." An invisible force spread out from his fingertips, and the surrounding space emitted a fine cracking sound, as if something had broken. Along with this voice, Shu Wei seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and his old face suddenly became much older. His complexion paled as he exclaimed in shock, "How is this possible? Your domain? How could it be so solid? How could it suppress the domain that this old man had been immersed in for so many years? You've only just broken through. This isn't real." Shu Wei was in his eyes, in his heart. Yang was in the origin. If time represents strength, then there would be no difference between a genius and a mediocre person in this world. "Old man, accept your fate." Yang Kai waved his hand and spread out his territory domain, directly blasting Shu Wei's territory into pieces and wrapping him in his own territory domain. Secret technique, Moon Blade. Yang Kai flicked his fingers and sent out a series of crescent-shaped space blades towards Shu Wei. These space blades were improved upon by Yang Kai after his comprehension of the Tao of space had improved. Although they looked exactly the same, both the power and concept contained within them were completely different. More than a dozen moon blades blocked Shu Wei's escape route and rapidly enlarged in his eyes. Shu Wei was frightened out of his wits and hurriedly bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence in order to push his Saint Qi to escape. Yang Kai just smiled coldly at him before his figure flickered and the power of his territory domain suddenly increased. Shu Wei felt as if a mountain was pressing down on his body. Desperately pushing his Saint Qi, he was barely able to move his body. Just as he was about to avoid the moonblades, Yang Kai opened his mouth and let out a thunderous roar. Secret technique, Shocking Void Roar. This was the divine technique Yang Kai had comprehended after refining the Shocking Void Beast's monster core. Although this divine technique couldn't exert its full power in Yang Kai's hands, it was still quite effective in interfering with Shu Wei. Sure enough, an explosive sound rang in Shu Wei's ears. This sound contained the power of Space Force, making it impossible for Shu Wei to determine its exact location. While he was hesitating, the moon blades had already arrived in front of him. "No!" Shu Wei shouted. His cry came to an abrupt end as a dozen moon blades pierced through Shu Wei's body. Shu Wei's whole body was torn apart, and from his wounds, one could clearly see his 5 viscera and 6 organs still squirming. Watching all this quietly, Yang Kai raised his brow and muttered to himself, "Not bad." Yang Kai also wanted to test the results of his comprehension, so when he fought with Shu Wei, he had gone all out, using all the secret techniques he had comprehended over the past few months. Whether it was Exile, Moonblades, or Shocking Void Roar, they were all secret techniques he had only recently comprehended. Under these 3 moves, a veteran origin king like Shu Wei had been killed. Space Force secret techniques were extremely difficult to defend against. Not far away, Zidong was dumbfounded. He never expected that Shu Wei would be killed by Yang Kai in just a few breaths of time. Wasn't he just an origin king? How could he die so easily? Even if Yang Kai had also broken through to the origin king realm, Shu Wei shouldn't have been so weak. Had something gone wrong? Right, Shu Wei must have had too much source strength extracted by the shattering void shuttle some time ago, so he no longer had the strength of an origin king, allowing Yang Kai to easily defeat him. Considering all this, Zidong's heart relaxed and his complexion improved greatly. It seemed that as long as Yang Kai wasn't too strong, Zidong would be happy. "Want to run? Now that you've entered my territory, do you think you can escape without my permission?" Yang Kai suddenly cast his gaze towards a certain spot in the void and coldly snorted, sending out a burst of pure spiritual energy. In an empty spot, a figure flickered slightly and suddenly appeared, a look of dread on his face as he stared at Yang Kai with gritted teeth. Kong Fa. When Shu Wei attacked Yang Kai, he had stealthily concealed himself and approached, preparing to find an opportunity to snatch away Yang Kai's space ring. Although Kong Fa was also an origin king, he was still somewhat lacking in front of Gui Zhu and Zilong. He knew that if he wanted to obtain the immortal tree, he would have to use a special method, and Shu Wei dealing with Yang Kai was undoubtedly a good opportunity. How could Kong Fa have known that Shu Wei, who he had known for many years and had colluded with several times, would be killed so easily? When he saw Shu Wei die, Kong Fa was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat, no longer daring to have any ideas, and quickly retreated. However, within his territory, Yang Kai had already noticed his existence, so how could he allow Kong Fa to do as he pleased? After being forced to reveal himself by Yang Kai's divine sense attack, Kong Fa's face became even more shocked. Because he could feel that the tyrannical divine sense attack just now was not something a cultivator who had just broken through to the Origin King realm could possess. It was comparable to a second-order or even third-order Origin King. The corners of Kong Fa's eyes twitched. Being in Yang Kai's territory made him feel extremely uneasy. After a long silence, he said bitterly, "Little friend, this old master has no malice towards you. How about letting this old master leave? This old master promises he will not intervene in this matter again." "No malice towards me?" Yang Kai sneered. "Then why did you sneak up on me? What else can I do?" "Brat, you're asking the obvious." Kong Fa cursed in his heart, but he did not know how to answer, so he could only smile and say, "This old master was thinking too much just now, but after seeing little friend's heaven-defying methods, this old master understands that this is not a place he can stay for long. I hope, little friend, since you've come, don't even think about leaving." Yang Kai interrupted him directly before he could finish speaking, a cold murderous intent flashing in his eyes. "Since you dared to have ideas about me, you should pay the price." Kong Fa frowned as a faint anger appeared on his face. This old master just wants to be safe. Can little friend not even satisfy this little request? Don't try to take advantage of your seniority. Yang Kai's face flashed fiercely. "Today, you will die. Arrogant junior." Kong Fa was furious. He had been compromising for so long, but now Yang Kai did not give him any face at all. Yang Kai was looking down on him too much. Although the method Yang Kai used to kill Shu Wei just now had shocked Kong Fa, he could also see that Shu Wei was not in his peak state at all, which was why he had been so easily killed by Yang Kai. On the other hand, Kong Fa was unscathed and was a genuine first-order Origin King. This little brat who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth had just broken through, yet he wanted to take his life. "Whether I'm arrogant or not, you can decide for yourself when you reach the underworld," Yang Kai sneered, and with a thought, increased the power of his territory field again. Asterisk Kai 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 Kai, asterisk in the void, countless fine void cracks suddenly appeared and swam about like fish. At the same time, Yang Kai's aura also erupted. "The peak of the First Order realm? That's impossible." Kong Fa screamed, almost biting his own tongue. Yang Kai had not released his aura before, so Kong Fa had not been able to clearly discern Yang Kai's strength, but now, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How was this little brat just breaking through to the Origin King realm? He was clearly at the peak of the First Order realm. After breaking through to the Origin King realm, it was impossible to cultivate to the peak of a minor realm without at least a few dozen years, and this was the speed of geniuses. Below that level, it was common for them to spend hundreds of years. For example, when Kong Fa and Shu Wei broke through to the Origin King realm, they entered secluded retreat for 100 years before stabilizing their realms. After that, it took them another 300 years to reach the peak of the First Order realm. This little brat had only disappeared for a few months, yet he had already reached the same level as Kong Fa. Kong Fa suddenly felt like he had lived so many years in vain. Chapter 1812. Zedong's eyes were completely sluggish. He stared blankly at Yang Kai, who was in high spirits, using one killing move after another, and Kong Fa, who was dodging in distress, unable to accept the reality of the situation. In a head-on battle, Yang Kai was actually suppressing Kong Fa. In less than 30 breaths of time, Kong Fa had been beaten to the point where he could only parry without being able to fight back. Zedong could see that Kong Fa's movements were sluggish and his Saint Chi was not circulating smoothly. Obviously, this was because he was being suppressed by Yang Kai's territory, so although both of them were peak first-order Origin Kings, in Yang Kai's territory, Kong Fa was not his opponent at all. It was only a matter of time before he was defeated and killed. Considering all this, Zedong's heart clenched as he suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. Shu Wei was already dead, and if Kong Fa died as well, Yang Kai's next target would be him. Two Origin Kings were not Yang Kai's opponent, so how could he, an Origin returning Realm Master, resist? As for his father, he was being entangled by that ghostly guy at the moment and seemed to have trouble dealing with him. What should I do? What should I do? Zedong's face was blank as he had no idea how to deal with this tricky situation in front of him. At that moment, from the vortex where Yang Kai had appeared, another figure walked out. As soon as this person appeared, he cried out, "Young man, wait for me, I can't find my way." Huh? I came out. Ha 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 ha, I, Lu Gui Chen, am finally free. I don't have to stay in that damned place anymore. This person seemed to have not yet figured out the situation in front of him, and as soon as he appeared from the vortex, he laughed wildly, as if there was no one around. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Zedong stared at Lu Gui Chen, who had suddenly appeared in amazement, vaguely feeling that he was familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen him before. Whatever, I'll capture him first. Since he's with that bastard, he must be one of his people. Zedong thought to himself. His figure flickered as he arrived in front of Lu Gui Chen, grabbed him by the neck, and said coldly, "Don't move. I want your life." Lu Gui Chen was taken aback and broke out in a cold sweat. How could he dare to act rashly? He nodded repeatedly, "I won't move, I won't move. Friend, if you have something to say, please don't get agitated." Saying so, Lu Gui Chen glanced over at Zedong. At this moment, Lu Gui Chen's eyes suddenly flashed with surprise as he called out, "Young master? Are you the young master? You called me young master." Zedong was stunned. "Who are you?" "Young master." Lu Gui Chen knelt down midair and hugged Zedong's thigh with both hands. As if he had seen a close relative, tears and snot flowed from his eyes. "Young master, this subordinate is Lu Gui Chen, Purple Sandstar's Lu Gui Chen from several dozen years ago. This subordinate was fortunate enough to meet young Lord once and even received some pointers from young Lord." "Young Lord, have you forgotten? Lu Gui Chen?" Zedong frowned, feeling that this name was very familiar, but he couldn't remember it for a while. However, seeing the other party's joyful expression, he didn't doubt him. After a moment of contemplation, Zedong suddenly realized, "You're from the Lu family, a descendant of Lu Li?" Yes, this subordinate is." Lu Gui Chen saw that the other party finally remembered him and was overjoyed. This subordinate thought he would never see anyone from Purple Star again in this life. "Unexpectedly, I was able to see young master's face as soon as I escaped. This subordinate is truly fortunate." "So it was you." Zedong confirmed that the other party was really someone from his Purple Star, his expression relaxing slightly as he nodded, "Stand up and speak. Didn't you die several dozen years ago? How did you come out from that place?" "Woo woo." Lu Gui Chen, despite his age, began to cry. It's a long story. Make it short, Zedong was anxious about how to deal with the current situation, so how could he be in the mood to listen to his long-winded ramblings? "It's like this." Lu Gui Chen hurriedly picked out the important parts and explained. "So that's how it is." After listening, Zedong nodded. "You've worked hard these past few decades." It wasn't hard at all. Being able to see young master again is all worth it." Lu Gui Chen squeezed out a smile, speaking as if he had finally made some kind of great contribution after suffering for several dozen years. Zedong was so angry that he didn't have time to pay attention to him. After all, the other party was just a second-order Saint King and wouldn't be of much help. "By the way, young master, the origin energy of that continent has been refined by a young man. If we can capture him." "What?" Zedong's face changed. "That guy refined the source of that continent." Although this subordinate did not see it with his own eyes, there should be no mistake. It's that young man." Lu Gui Chen swept his eyes around and saw Yang Kai, who was fighting Kong Fa, pointing his finger in his direction. As soon as these words fell, his mouth suddenly opened wide, because he saw Kong Fa struggling to resist Yang Kai's attacks, his entire body covered in blood. Several dozen golden blood threads were flying around Yang Kai, and these golden blood threads were like living creatures, rapidly shuttling through the void and causing damage to Kong Fa from time to time. Little friend, stop. This old master admits defeat, please spare my life. Kong Fa's face was ashen as he desperately tried to resist the attacks of the golden blood threads while shouting loudly. If admitting defeat is useful, what's the point of cultivating? Yang Kai remained unmoved and waved his hand forward, moon blade. Kai. A 10 feet long moon blade suddenly took shape and slashed vertically towards Kong Fa. Kong Fa's face changed drastically as he formed a series of seals with his hands. A dazzling brilliance emerged from his body as an ancient bell-like artifact flew out and transformed into a bell-shaped light curtain that enveloped him. Kong. The bell rang loudly and the sound waves transformed into an invisible force that bombarded Kong Fa's knowledge sea. The crescent blade cut into the light screen, but it was unable to completely break through it. It was only able to penetrate less than 3 inches before it was stopped. Seeing this scene, Kong Fa secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He had obtained this resounding Emperor Bell in his early years and was an origin-grade defensive artifact. It was extremely sturdy and could not be broken by an ordinary cultivator. With the protection of this resounding Emperor Bell, Kong Fa was able to contend with an ordinary second-order origin king. Seeing Yang Kai's attack fail, Kong Fa felt a little more confident and snorted, "Little friend, do you really want to kill me? You and I meeting is fate, don't be so ruthless." "Shut up." Yang Kai's expression remained unchanged as he waved his hands again and again. "You think you're safe just because you have a turtle shell? Watch how I break your tortoise shell." Kai. More than a dozen huge moonblades flew towards Kong Fa one after another, causing Kong Fa's face to change drastically as his eyes filled with horror. Pushing his Saint Chi, he poured all of his strength into the resounding Emperor Bell. The sound of the bell grew louder and louder as the bell-shaped light curtain suddenly became much brighter. Hong 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 hong. The moon blade slammed into the resounding Emperor Bell's light curtain, causing it to tremble violently, as if it would shatter at any moment. Catcher. Finally, a sound that sounded like a death knell entered Kong Fa's ears. He shuddered and stared ahead with wide eyes, only to see that a crack had appeared on the protective light screen of his Imperial Bell. This crack spread out at an extremely fast speed, and in the blink of an eye, the light curtain was riddled with holes. With a loud bang, the resounding Emperor Bell's defense finally broke. "Little friend, please spare me." Kong Fa's face went pale as he cried out, "Die." Yang Kai's expression remained cold as he condensed his several dozen golden blood threads together, transforming them into a golden sword that followed closely behind the moonblade, flickering slightly before disappearing. In the next moment, Kong Fa's body stiffened in place. He lowered his head and looked at his chest, only to see a bloody hole. Through that hole, he could see his shattered heart. His vitality rapidly faded as everything in front of him turned dark. This old master actually, before Kong Fa could finish speaking, he completely lost all signs of life. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and collected the resounding Emperor Bell, throwing it into his space ring without even looking at it. At the same time, he also took away Kong Fa's space ring. "You're next." Yang Kai turned around and stared coldly at the shocked Zedong before waving his hand lightly and sending out a burst of energy towards Zedong. Zedong was horrified. Although Yang Kai's blow seemed casual, he knew that it was not something he could easily resist. After all, this was the blow of an Origin King Realm Master. In a moment of desperation, Zedong didn't even hesitate to grab Lu Guichen's neck and throw him forward. "Young Master, you." Lu Guichen was still immersed in the joy of seeing Zedong again and never expected such a thing to happen. By the time he reacted, he was already halfway to his destination. A strong wind hit him and before Lu Guichen could make a sound, his entire body exploded into a bloody mist. "Boy, you're quite ruthless." Yang Kai looked at Zedong sarcastically with a mocking look on his face. He was also quite surprised that Zedong would do such a thing to resolve his attack. This Purple Star's young master was already rotten to the core. He didn't kill Lu Guichen on the floating continent, nor did he prevent him from leaving the floating continent through the space corridor with him, mainly because Lu Gui Chen had provided him with some useful information before. Yang Kai didn't deliberately help him, nor did he deliberately target him. Lu Gui Chen's life and death depended on his own fortune. It was laughable that after this guy escaped from the floating continent, he was schemed against by his own young master. Yang Kai estimated that he would die with grievance in the Yellow Springs underworld. But you still have to die. Yang Kai chuckled. What do you want to do? Zedong's face turned pale as he shouted fiercely, Boy, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you broke through to the Origin King realm. I am Purple Star's young master, you can't kill me. Purple Star's young master? Did your master tell you that Purple Star's young master can't be killed? Idiot, I really don't know how you managed to survive until now, Yang Kai spat disdainfully. Do you really want to kill me? Zedong was shocked as he confirmed that Yang Kai wasn't just trying to scare him. Do you know what the consequences will be if you kill me? My Purple Star will never let this go. When the time comes, even if you flee to the ends of the world, you won't be able to live in peace. Chapter 1813. I'm so scared. Yang Kai made an extremely exaggerated expression as he covered his chest with his hand, looking like he was really afraid. In the next moment, his face became frigid as he coldly declared, But that has nothing to do with you. If your Purple Star dares to hunt me down, I'll kill one if one comes, I'll kill two if two come. I don't know how many Origin Kings your Purple Star has for me to kill. Saying so, a cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Zedong shuddered. Being stared at by Yang Kai, his entire body felt cold. He could tell that the other party was not trying to intimidate him, nor was he joking, so he anxiously called out, Father, save me. He did not have the courage to fight Yang Kai and directly asked Zilong for help. Young talents like him, Shui Yu, and Jiyu Jian should all have extremely tough martial Dao wills. They were bound to become stronger when facing a strong opponent, and the more setbacks they faced, the more courageous they became. For example, Jiyu Jian had been ambushed by Li Minghai that day and fought desperately. If Shui Yu were to encounter such a situation, she would definitely not ask for help and would instead find a way to confront the enemy. So what if one was an Origin King? Which genius did not regard fighting above their own realm as a common occurrence? If one lost the courage to fight after being targeted by a cultivator one minor realm above them, what was the point of cultivating in the future? A cultivator who could only compete with those in the same realm would never be able to reach the peak of the martial Dao. Zedong had completely lost the qualifications to become a future master of Star Territory. Since meeting Yang Kai, he had been humiliated and beaten down time and time again. The depths of his heart had long been riddled with holes and a haze of despair. As such, he did not dare to fight against Yang Kai. Even if he could survive this time, whether or not he could break through to the Origin King realm in the future was uncertain. Little brat, if you dare touch a hair on my son, this old master will slaughter your entire family and exterminate your 9 generations. Not far away, Zilong's angry roar rang out, but his voice was quickly drowned out by the explosion. How could he not want to save his son? Unfortunately, he was completely enveloped by Gui Zhu's 10,000 soul banner. All around him, he could not escape. Even if he wanted to, there was nothing he could do. Is that so? Yang Kai tilted his head and glanced in the direction of the voice, sneering softly. Waving his hand. A burst of energy flew out. The next moment, Zedong felt a chill run down his spine and his whole body shivered. Am I dead? Am I dead? Zedong was bewildered as his imagination ran wild. But soon, he calmed down. He discovered that he was completely unharmed, but there was a strange feeling on the top of his head. Hair. His elegant long hair had been directly cut off by Kai Yang, leaving a bald patch on top of his head. His appearance was definitely comical to the extreme. Even though he wasn't as handsome as Shui Yu, he was still a rare and handsome man. His long purple hair was his favorite part of his hair. It was the color of his hair. It was the color of his hair that he had inherited from his ancestors. It was his favorite part of his hair. It made him look even more handsome. But now, his long purple hair had been cut off and taken away from him. While Zedong felt distressed, he was also extremely frightened. Yang Kai's casual blow had left him no time to react. If he could cut off his hair, he could also cut off his head. Considering all this, Zedong suddenly began sweating profusely and his face turned as white as paper. "I've touched a lot of his hair now, what are you going to do about it?" Yang Kai sneered. Inside the 10,000 soul banner, Zilong remained silent, presumably enraged. Gui Zhu, on the other hand, laughed loudly. "This old master has long been dissatisfied with these two's purple hair. Good job, little brat." Zilong's voice sounded again. "If you let my son go, this old master will withdraw and never find trouble with you again. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. All of us have mingled together in this star territory, so in the future, you may need my Purple Star's help. As the sect master of Purple Star, this old master can promise you any condition that is not excessive. As long as my Purple Star can accomplish it, it will definitely satisfy you." "That's good," Yang Kai chuckled. "Being able to ask Purple Star to do something for me is an honor." "It's good you know. Zedong nodded repeatedly. "As long as you don't kill me, anything can be discussed. If I become the sect master of Purple Star in the future, I can even swear brotherhood with you." As he spoke, a look of resentment flashed across his eyes. Although it was fleeting, how could it escape Yang Kai's observation? "So, you agree?" Zilong asked in a deep voice. "I agree, what's there to consider?" Senior Zilong's eyes reached the heavens, "And although my sect's supreme elder can suppress you, I'm afraid he can't kill you. Instead of fighting until both sides suffer, it's better to part ways." "You're a reasonable man," Zilong nodded with satisfaction. In fact, just as Yang Kai said, although Gui Zhu could temporarily trap Zilong in the 10,000 soul banner, it was impossible for him to kill him. Both of them were second-order origin kings, so even if Gui Zhu could kill Zilong, he would likely lose half of his life or even die. Gui Zhu frowned. Although he was very kind to Yang Kai, that did not mean he was a kind person. On the contrary, Gui Zhu was a vicious and merciless person. He knew that this matter could not be resolved peacefully. Even if Yang Kai and Zilong really reached some kind of truce agreement, Yang Kai would definitely not obtain any benefits in the future. If Yang Kai really went to Purple Star to ask them to do something in the future, he would likely be immediately captured by the many masters of Purple Star. After all, Zilong and his son had lost a lot of face this time, and this matter was related to the immortal tree, so how could Zilong give up? However, in the current situation, he did not have any good solutions and could only let Yang Kai do as he pleased. "Of course I'm reasonable, haha," Yang Kai said as he stretched out his hand and rubbed his forehead, putting on an embarrassed look. Speaking of which, I really do have something I need Senior Zilong to help me with. I hope Senior can agree." Zilong's face could not help sinking as he thought to himself, is this little brat really trying to use a chicken feather as an arrow? What they said just now was nothing more than empty words. Everyone had some scruples about saving face and would part on good terms. As long as one had a brain, they would not take it seriously, but this little brat was actually hitting the snake with a stick and directly making demands. Although his face was displeased, Zilong still said patiently, "Speak, as long as this Zilong can do it, I will do it for you. After taking Donglai out of here, I will immediately issue a kill order. This old master will make sure you have no road to heaven and no door to earth." Zilong secretly swore to himself. This matter is very simple, Senior Zilong can naturally do it. Yang Kai chuckled, his expression completely harmless. Junior is bold enough to ask Senior to die. Sigh. Inside the 10,000 soul banner, Gui Zhu's sharp intake of breath rang out, the howling and wailing coming from inside seeming to stop for a moment, highlighting the extreme turmoil in Gui Zhu's heart. Zilong also fell silent immediately, but anyone could feel that his anger was rising steadily, as if it could burn the 10,000 soul banner to ashes. Not far away, Zedong's jaw dropped as he stared blankly at Yang Kai, unable to imagine that Yang Kai would make such a request and even put on such an expression. Does this little brat know what he's saying? Was there something wrong with his brain? Before he could finish thinking, Zedong felt his vision blur as Yang Kai suddenly appeared in front of him and stretched out his hand to grab him. Zedong screamed in horror, pushing his purple chi eternal river secret art to its limit as he tried to escape. However, all his efforts were in vain. Before he could react to what was going on, he felt his strength being suppressed and his whole body being lifted up by Yang Kai by the neck. Ha! Yang Kai sighed. It seems that Senior Zilong is a man who doesn't keep his word. Since that's the case, let's settle this once and for all. Junior, if you dare hurt my son, this old master will tear you to pieces. Zilong roared anxiously. Stretching out his other hand, Kai Yang carelessly picked his ear and curled his lips. You've already said similar words to me before, but I don't see you doing anything to me. Old man, do you only know how to be fierce with your mouth? Can't you show some real action? However, I'm very curious, if I really kill him, what will you do? Zilong didn't dare to speak, for fear of touching Yang Kai's nerves and causing his son to be killed. He finally understood that this little brat was a complete madman, and there was no reasoning with a madman. Catcher. The sound of bones breaking came from Zedong's neck as he slapped Yang Kai's arm with both hands, seemingly trying to push him away, but unable to use his Saint Chi, he was simply too weak. Yang Kai glanced at him faintly and said coldly, I have no grievances with you, father and son, and we have never interfered with each other's business, but you took advantage of your position to bully others. Today, you brought this upon yourselves. In the next life, don't think too highly of yourself, it's too easy to fall. As soon as these words fell, Yang Kai tightened his grip. Zedong's head tilted to the side and his struggling stopped instantly, his vitality severed. Purple Star's young master was dead. Perceiving the movement here, Guizhu almost bit his tongue in shock. Even he hadn't expected that Yang Kai would really kill Zedong. He had been wondering whether Yang Kai was deliberately trying to obtain more benefits from Zilong, or if he had some other plan. But he hadn't expected that Yang Kai would really kill him. This is bad. Guizhu's heart clenched. His own son had been killed, so Zilong was likely going to go completely berserk. Before this thought even came to an end though, Guizhu's eyes flashed a look of horror as the originally dark 10,000 soul banner suddenly burst with thousands of purple rays of light. These rays of light contained an extremely terrifying killing intent, forcing all the evil spirits to retreat while his own 10,000 soul banner buzzed and trembled violently. Hong. A gap was blasted open in the 10,000 soul banner and Zilong's figure shot out from it, charging straight towards Yang Kai, a ferocious look on his face as he roared, Boy, I'll make you pay with your blood. Chapter 1814. Zilong's full-powered blow allowed him to break free from the 10,000 soul banner's shroud in an instant. A purple light circulated around his body as he shot towards Yang Kai like a dazzling meteor. Young boy, run! Guizhu was shocked as he put away his 10,000 soul banner and chased after Zilong while shouting to Yang Kai. Yang Kai stood in place, as if he did not notice the approaching danger, remaining unmoved, but his expression had become extremely dignified. Seeing that Zilong was about to reach him, Yang Kai suddenly let out a low roar and pushed his strength madly. His 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art circulated around his body as a 5-colored brilliance burst forth. Circulating his monster transformation secret technique, dragon scales instantly appeared on his right arm and his right hand transformed into a dragon claw. Dantian, he threw a punch forward fiercely. The 5-colored brilliance collided with the purple light and the surrounding 1,000-kilometer territory shook for a moment. In the next moment, with the point of contact as the center, a halo visible to the naked eye spread out in all directions. Yang Kai let out a muffled groan as he was sent flying backwards, unable to stop himself no matter how hard he tried, coughing up a mouthful of golden blood. Although Zilong stood firmly in place, his face paled as a look of extreme shock appeared on his face. Immediately, red blood began flowing from the corner of his mouth. In this exchange, he had actually suffered some minor injuries. This little brat, Zilong's heart was filled with shock as a look of disbelief appeared on his face. He was a veteran second-order origin king and the sect master of Purple Star, a man who cultivated an astonishing secret art. In the entire star territory, there were only a handful of people. There were really not many who could fight against him. In front of him, a first-order origin king was nothing. However, young Kai, a junior who had just broken through to the origin king realm, was actually able to fight him head-on. Even for people like Shu Wei and Kong Fa, if they were hit by this blow, their bones would shatter and their internal organs would shatter. What was the origin of this boy? Who was his master? Why did he have such terrifying potential? Yang Kai had just broken through to the origin king realm and was already able to fight against him. If he broke through to the third-order origin king realm, who in star territory would be his opponent? Thinking of this, Zilong could not help but break out in a cold sweat. He was even more determined to kill Yang Kai. Wails and howls came from behind. Zilong knew that this was Gui Zhu who had been tailing them. He abruptly turned around and spat out a beam of purple profound light. Tai purple profound chi. This was one of the divine technique that came with the purple cloud long river art. A strand of Tai purple profound chi needed to be cultivated for 200 years before it could be formed. It was extremely difficult for Zilong. There were only 3 strands. But in order to resist Gui Zhu's killer move, he had no choice but to use it. As soon as the purple light appeared, Gui Zhu's face changed drastically because he felt an extremely terrifying aura from this attack and didn't dare to act carelessly. With a wave of the 10,000 soul banner, he unfurled the ghost banner and hid within it. However, the Tai purple profound chi continued to rush into the 10,000 soul banner like a hot knife through butter. In an instant, countless yin souls were killed on the spot, causing Gui Zhu's heart to twitch in pain. However, at this time, he couldn't care less. While urging the 10,000 soul banner to neutralize the attack of the Tai purple profound chi, he rushed towards Yang Kai, fearing that Yang Kai would be killed by Zilong's attack. Soon, he arrived beside Yang Kai and his figure reappeared, asking worriedly, "Is he dead?" Yang Kai clutched his chest, coughing as he glanced over at Gui Zhu and smiled bitterly. "What do you think? It's good that he's not dead. You really scared this old master." Gui Zhu couldn't help feeling relieved as he stared at Yang Kai, a look of shock gradually filling his face. He found that Yang Kai's injuries weren't too serious and the fluctuations of power coming from his body were still stable and powerful. Gui Zhu gulped nervously, just like Zilong was shocked. This little brat is really a monster. How did he accomplish this? On top of that, the 5-colored light around his body and the dragon-like transformation of his arms were obviously the result of some kind of incredible secret technique. This was especially true for Gui Zhu's scale-covered dragon arms, from which Gui Zhu felt a pressure that made his heart palpitate uneasily. Dragon pressure. Gui Zhu was taken aback by this thought that emerged in his mind. Restraining his thoughts, Gui Zhu stopped thinking about these random thoughts and instead said, "Boy, do you want to quit while you're ahead? This old master will listen to you. Naturally, I want to cut the weeds and dig up the roots." Yang Kai wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared forward coldly. "Good." Gui Zhu narrowed his eyes and nodded heavily. "Since that's the case, this old master will accompany you in your madness." Since this old master left the mountain, he has never fought an origin king. "I never expected that the first one I fought would be such a bastard, Jie Jie." Saying so, a strong fighting intent surged from Gui Zhu's body. On the other side, Zilong, who had repelled Yang Kai with a single blow and then forced Gui Zhu away, did not pursue and instead summoned a round bowl-like artifact and sent it towards the dead Zidong. An extremely soft light exuded from this round bowl as it pulled Zidong's body towards it. Enveloped in this light, Zilong's expression became dignified as he formed a series of profound seals with his hands and sent them into the round bowl. Something seemed to be pulled out of Zidong's body and gathered into the round bowl. Soon, an illusory figure appeared at the center of the round bowl, and this figure was none other than the dead Zidong. At first, this figure was ethereal and invisible, as if it would scatter in the wind, but with Zilong's continuous efforts, this figure became more and more solid, as if Zidong's soul avatar had left his body. The eyes of this figure also gradually became clear. Finally, as Zilong spat out a mouthful of blood, Zidong's figure shuddered and woke up. Turning his head blankly, he quickly understood what had happened. "Father, Please avenge your son. Your son was killed by that bastard. Zedong's figure stood in the round bowl and cried loudly, but as a soul avatar, he did not shed a single tear. Waste. Zilong's face was livid, but after reprimanding his son, his expression gradually softened as he nodded. Rest assured, father will seek justice for you. Just stay in the soul-sustaining bowl. When we return to Purple Star, I will find a way to reconstruct your body. Yes, Zedong was overjoyed and his figure flickered before disappearing. Zilong then carefully put away the soul-sustaining bowl, turned around, and stared coldly in the direction of Yang Kai. No matter what, this little brat must die. Even if he had to suffer serious injuries, he would kill him here. Such a person, if left alone and allowed to grow, would become a terrifying existence. Brilliant Purple Star River. Zilong suddenly shouted as the purple light around his body quickly receded. Instead, a shocking long sword condensed from purple light appeared in his hand. With this purple sword in hand, Zilong's momentum soared and an aura that caused hundreds of millions of creatures to tremble filled the air. He stared coldly at Yang Kai and shouted, "Boy, no one can save your life today. Will you die if you don't talk big? My life is right here. If you have the ability, come and take it yourself." Yang Kai showed no fear and took a step forward. Zilong did not say a word as his sword flashed and his entire body was wrapped in sword light. In an instant, he crossed a few kilometers and appeared directly in front of Yang Kai. Exile. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and slapped the space in front of him, instantly disintegrating and forming a black hole. Zilong's momentum was so fast that he almost rushed into the black hole, scaring him so much that he quickly turned around and dodged. Moon Blade. Yang Kai's voice sounded again as a series of crescent-shaped shockwaves flew towards Zedong, as if they were free. Zedong was suddenly forced into a panic and could only jump up and down, not daring to touch these attacks condensed from pure space force. Who knew what the consequences would be if he touched them? Yang Kai laughed loudly. "Old dog, you can't even get close to me, yet you want to take my life. Try again in your next life." Guizhu watched from the sidelines, cold sweat dripping down his back as he secretly sighed to himself, each generation producing a new talent to replace the old. He boasted that he was an Origin King Realm Master and that there were few in the Star Territory who could make him feel fear. But when had he ever seen Yang Kai use such strange means? Putting himself in Zilong's shoes, Guizhu knew that if he were Zilong, the situation would not be any better as he would be forced back by Yang Kai and unable to get close. Purple Chi from the east. Zilong suddenly roared as his already terrifying aura soared once more. In the next moment, he did not dodge and instead slashed out with his sword towards the countless moon blades. This sword strike could be described as shocking as it contained Zilong's endless anger and martial Dao, causing even Guizhu's eyelids to jump. Without even thinking about it, Guizhu threw out his 10,000 soul banner and transformed it into a black curtain that blocked in front of him and Yang Kai. Hong Long Long. The moonblades were cut apart and even the 10,000 soul banner was unable to resist the light of this sword strike. Zilong's attack arrived directly above Yang Kai's head, as if it would tear him apart in the next moment. Yang Kai grabbed Guizhu and with a single step, space force circulated around his body and he disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already behind Zilong Zheng. Unsheathing the dragon bone sword, Yang Kai poured his Saint Chi into it and the green dragon bone sword suddenly transformed into a giant dragon that swooped towards Zilong. Guizhu also took action leisurely, forming a series of seals with his hands as a huge ghost head suddenly appeared. This ghost head had a green face and sharp fangs, exuding a dense yin qi. It was as light as a feather, but its speed was incredibly fast as it chased after the dragon bone sword and bit towards Zilong's back. Zilong's reaction was extremely fast. The moment he saw Yang Kai and Guizhu disappear, he realized what was going to happen next. Zilong took back his sword and swung it backhandedly. This sword strike landed right on the giant dark green dragon and the ghost head. A dragon roar rang out as Zilong's full-powered attack sent the giant dark green dragon flying. The ghost head did not seem to have fared any better, its entire face twisting as it was split in two. Although he had resolved the joint attack of Yang Kai and Guizhu, Zilong's momentum, which had reached its peak, suddenly fell and his face paled slightly. Obviously, resolving such an attack was not an easy task for him. Chapter 18:15. While he was down, they would take his life. Yang Kai and Gui Zhu were both astute, so how could they let go of such a great opportunity? Immediately, both of them used their heaven-defying means to attack Zilong, whose momentum had plummeted. Countless moon blades flew out and a large number of ghost heads flew out, directly swallowing up the place where Zilong stood. There was a violent collision of energy coming from inside. Yang Kai and Gui Zhu stared forward without blinking, their expressions gradually becoming dignified. After a while, the shocking movement gradually dissipated and Zilong's figure reappeared. At this moment, this Purple Star sect's master looked quite dispirited, as if Yuan Qi had been seriously injured. His appearance was also quite distressed, but there was no danger to his life because at some unknown point, a purple-red battle armor had appeared on his body. This battle armor gave off an extremely strong artifact aura, making it obvious at a glance that it was not an ordinary artifact. A battle armor that could withstand the combined attack of Yang Kai and Gui Zhu was at least origin grade mid-rank. This level of defensive artifact was as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns in the entire starfield. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was priceless. For example, Kong Fa's reverberating Emperor's Bell was only an origin-grade low-rank defensive artifact. Compared to Zilong's battle armor, the difference in value was like the difference between heaven and earth. Although his life was not in danger, many cracks had appeared on his purple-red battle armor, causing a look of distress to flash across Zilong's eyes. This purple-red battle armor was a treasure passed down from generation to generation in Purple Star. Every generation of Purple Star sect masters would keep it close to their bodies. After experiencing the vicissitudes of the flowing time Great Emperor for tens of thousands of years, it had witnessed the evolution of history and the countless ups and downs of Purple Star. However, at that moment, it was damaged. Furthermore, the damage was extremely serious. This battle armor was an artifact left behind from ancient times, and with the means of today's artifact refiners and the materials available, it was impossible to repair it, so how could Zilong not feel distressed? However, after being attacked like this, Zilong's mind became much clearer. Just now, he was furious that his son had been killed, so his blood had rushed to his head and he had only wanted to kill Yang Kai for revenge, but he had misjudged the situation. As a result, he had also suffered a great loss. Now he understood that it was impossible for him to kill Yang Kai by himself. Without even mentioning that Yang Kai was proficient in the Tao of Space and could easily escape if he couldn't win, Gui Zhu and Yang Kai working together was more than enough to suppress him. If things went wrong, Yang Kai would lose his life here. Therefore, Zilong already had thoughts of retreating. Revenge was a dish best served cold. In any case, he had already taken his son's soul into the soul-sustaining bowl. After returning to Purple Star, all he needed to do was gather the necessary materials. This would allow him to reconstruct his body, and at that time, he could mobilize the entire power of Purple Star to encircle and annihilate Yang Kai. Thinking of this, Zilong took a deep breath and said coldly, "Kid, I hope the next time we meet, you can still be so arrogant. You want to leave?" Gui Zhu's face changed. "In your dreams." As he spoke, the 10,000 soul banner let out a ghostly howl. It transformed into a black curtain that enveloped Zilong. "If this king wants to leave, none of you can stop him." Zilong's expression remained unchanged as he formed a series of hand seals. His entire figure transformed into a purple streak of light that instantly broke through the 10,000 soul banner's shroud and shot off into the depths of Purple Star territory. Yang Kai looked in the direction Zilong was escaping and raised his brow, a gloating smile appearing on his face. "Yang Kai, that guy is running away. Why aren't you chasing after him?" Gui Zhu saw Yang Kai remain motionless and immediately became anxious. "If we let him go, there will be no end to our troubles. If he had fled in another direction, I may have had to expend some effort to chase after him. But for him to run in this direction, his courting death," Yang Kai's expression was extremely strange. "What do you mean?" Gui Zhu was confused, having no idea what Yang Kai was talking about. But in the next moment, his eyes bulged because he saw a scene that made him shudder. Somewhere in Purple Star's territory, a huge palm suddenly appeared without warning, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The location it appeared from was exactly where Yang Kai had emerged from the floating continent. What kind of palm was this? It was the size of a small house, and although it looked ordinary, there was an inexplicable aura flowing from it. This aura was something even a master like Gui Zhu could not comprehend. It was something that had surpassed the level of an Origin King Realm cultivator's territory. He waved his palm and headed straight for the purple dragon. It seemed to be extremely slow, but the force behind it caused the void to become unstable. Zilong was shocked. He was currently injured and just wanted to get away from this place, so how could he have anticipated such a giant palm would suddenly appear to block his path? Feeling the terrifying power fluctuations coming from this giant palm, Zilong did not dare to show the slightest neglect and madly pushed his own strength as well as the power of his territory in an attempt to resist this attack. A scene that shocked him appeared. His domain had just been activated, but it was shattered into pieces. It was as ethereal as the moon in the water, and the giant palm did not slow down at all as it slammed towards him. It was as if it was swatting a fly. Zilong was so frightened that his soul almost flew out of his body. The slightly tattered purple-red battle armor on his body once again exuded a dazzling purple-red light as a thick layer of Saint Chi appeared around his body. Hong. The giant palm slammed into Zilong's body, and in the next moment, Zilong was swept away like a rag sack. His figure flew through the void, blood spraying everywhere as dazzling sparks flew from his body. Sigh. Gui Zhu sucked in a cold breath. Although he had guessed the power of this giant palm to the best of his ability, in the end, he still found that he had underestimated it. That palm looked ordinary, but it was incredibly powerful. What the hell was this? If this palm was so big, then what about the real body? Before he could finish thinking about this though, Gui Zhu's wish was granted as the owner of that palm suddenly walked out from the void. Gui Zhu was stunned for a moment before staring blankly at the owner of that palm before turning to Yang Kai and asking, "Is this guy your brother? Or your son?" Yang Kai quickly discovered that the owner of this palm was a stone giant about 300 meters tall, but the face of this stone giant was somewhat similar to Yang Kai's, especially its facial features, which all shared the same charm. "Supreme Elder, please don't be so humorous," Yang Kai frowned. "What the hell is this?" Gui Zhu was about to go crazy. He didn't know what this stone giant in front of him was, but he was certain that Yang Kai definitely didn't have one a few months ago, otherwise, he wouldn't have run away at that time. With such a huge, indomitable stone giant, who could possibly face it head-on? Embodiment. Yang Kai replied in a deep voice. Embodiment. Gui Zhu frowned as a look of shock appeared on his face. The legendary external incarnation? The one you used in the Medicine Valley? You actually know such a shocking secret technique? No wonder this stone giant looked similar to Yang Kai. It turned out that it was Yang Kai's embodiment. However, was an embodiment supposed to look like this? Gui Zhu had also heard of this secret technique before. Generally speaking, a cultivator's embodiment was identical to their main body, inheriting part of their strength, personality, and thoughts, and acting according to their will. But this Yang Kai embodiment in front of him, wasn't it a bit too strange? Yang Kai. Gui Zhu's eyes suddenly flashed a fiery light as he stared at Yang Kai expectantly. Wait until I kill this guy. Yang Kai seemed to know what he wanted to ask. Good. Gui Zhu nodded vigorously. Yang Kai grinned as he stared coldly at Zilong, who was coughing up blood not far away, his murderous intent surging like a tide. After taking a blow from the embodiment, Zilong's purple-red battle armor had completely shattered. Although this battle armor was an Origin-grade mid-rank defensive artifact, it had already been damaged after taking the joint attack of Yang Kai and Gui Zhu, so how could it survive another blow from the embodiment? The embodiment was formed after swallowing and refining the entire floating continent, so in other words, the current embodiment was the floating continent itself. That blow was a blow from the entire floating continent, one that contained the world principles of the floating continent. No matter how powerful a cultivator was, How could they compete with a floating continent that was 200,000 or 300,000 kilometers in radius? Even Xiao Xiao, who was also a member of the stone mongoose race, could not compete with this kind of strength and world principles. Zilong not dying on the spot was already a reflection of his profound strength. But now, he was definitely an arrow at the end of its flight. Yang Kai did not lower his guard. Zilong was a veteran second-order origin king, and no one could guarantee that he did not have some kind of trump card up his sleeve, so with a wave of his hand, Yang Kai summoned the stone puppet and firebird. Kill him. Yang Kai pointed forward. The stone mongoose and firebird received the order and immediately rushed forward. Along the way, Xiao Xiao had already transformed into his stone giant form, but compared to the embodiment, his 10-meter-tall stone giant was like a father and son. Liu Yang, on the other hand, had transformed into his firebird form. Purple and red light lingered around his body as he used the power of thunder and fire to seal off a large area of space. The embodiment moved its huge body and walked towards Zilong step by step. However, this guy was too big, making it difficult for him to move, which was why Yang Kai did not release him at the beginning. The embodiment was strong, but not agile. That was why Yang Kai had it hide in the void and wait for an opportunity to attack. He did not expect that Zilong would pass by the embodiment while escaping. Zilong's bad luck made Yang Kai worry about him. At that time, if Zilong had escaped in a different direction, Yang Kai would have had to desperately chase after him. Although he could have done so, it would not have been as easy as now. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang rushed above Zilong's head. Xiao Xiao grasped the heaven-shaking pillar in his hand and smashed it down with a roar. At the same time, Liu Yang opened his mouth and spat out a lightning-like flame towards Zilong. A look of despair appeared in Zilong's eyes. Just as Yang Kai had observed, after being attacked one after another, Zilong was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Any random origin king would be enough to take his life. What's more, this was the joint attack of Xiao Xiao and Firebird, as well as Yang Kai, Gui Zhu, and the embodiment. Chapter 1816. At this moment, Zilong knew that he could not escape no matter what. A look of unwillingness flashed across his eyes as he glared in the direction of Yang Kai with resentment. Immediately forming a series of seals with his hands, his face flushed red and his whole body began to swell up like a balloon, blue veins bulging on his face, giving him a terrifying appearance. At the same time, an extremely violent energy fluctuation burst from Zilong's body. Not good, he's going to self-destruct. Gui Zhu's complexion changed drastically as the soles of his feet began to cramp. Although he was 10 kilometers away from Zilong at this moment, the self-destruction of a second-order origin king was not something that could be reduced by such a small distance. Once Zilong really self-destructed, the surrounding several hundred kilometers would likely be swallowed up. Gui Zhu did not dare guarantee that he could remain unscathed in such a situation. He immediately knew that Zilong had really been forced into a dead end, otherwise, how could a second-order origin king choose such a desperate approach? Wishful thinking. Yang Kai's expression was also extremely solemn as he stretched out his hand and summoned out a light blue bead. Immediately after, he poured his Saint Qi and spiritual energy into it. In just a breath of time, Yang Kai's entire body seemed to wither while the light blue bead only glowed faintly. Go! Yang Kai flicked his finger towards the bead and an arc of lightning as thin as an ox's hair shot out from the bead towards Zilong. Cold sweat dripped down Gui Zhu's forehead as his eyes bulged as he stared blankly at the seemingly inconspicuous arc of lightning, his heart shaking violently. Because he felt a destructive aura from it, one that he could not even muster up the will to resist. This kind of power seemed to have surpassed the origin king realm and seemed to dominate this world. Haha, have you run out of tricks? Even if this king dies, don't think you'll have an easy time. Zilong smiled bitterly as he stared sarcastically at the thin arc of lightning from Yang Kai, thinking that Yang Kai was powerless. However, he only saw Yang Kai staring back at him with the same sarcastic and mocking gaze. Zilong frowned. At this moment, the thin and weak electric arc suddenly rushed in front of him and flashed before his eyes. In the next moment, Zilong felt his entire body go numb. It was as if he had been struck by divine lightning from the ninth heaven. His entire mind was frozen. Out of the corner of his eye, Yang Kai saw countless arcs of lightning slithering across his body like snakes, and under the destructive power of these arcs of lightning, his second-order origin king physique, which he was so proud of, began to crumble, his strength rapidly melting away like snowflakes under the scorching sun. His bloated body shriveled at an extremely fast speed. "This is impossible," Zilong roared unwillingly. In the next moment, the tiny heaven-shaking pillar had already smashed down. Firebird Liu Yang's thunder fire also engulfed him. After 3 breaths, the dust settled, and the place where Zilong had been standing was now empty. Not even his bones remained. Only his own space ring was left behind as it shot off into the distance. Liu Yang turned around, transformed into his human form, and chased after the space ring. *PU. Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood as his face turned extremely pale. Sitting cross-legged in the void, he reached out, took out a spirit pill, and stuffed it into his mouth. Circulating his secret art, he began to heal himself. Gui Zhu stood to the side in a daze. He had watched the battle just now from beginning to end, and although he and Yang Kai had joined forces to injure Zilong at the beginning, he had not contributed at the last moment. In other words, he had been able to kill Zilong. Yang Kai definitely deserved 80% of the credit. Perhaps, even without his help, Yang Kai could have done this. When this thought appeared in his mind, Gui Zhu was taken aback. A person who had just broken through to the Origin King realm could actually kill a character like Zilong? This little brat, is he even human? Gui Zhu stared at Yang Kai like he was some kind of monster. What shocked Gui Zhu even more was the light blue bead Yang Kai had summoned at the last moment. That was definitely an incredible artifact. However, Gui Zhu was unable to identify the grade of this bead. While he was in a daze, Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang returned together and surrounded Gui Zhu, glaring at him with unkind eyes. "What are you doing?" Gui Zhu's mouth twitched. "This old master is High Heaven Sect Supreme Elder and is on the same side as your master. Don't look at this old master like that, it's as if this old master wants to harm him." He knew that the reason Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang were wary of him was entirely because Yang Kai was currently healing here, so he didn't intend to make a fuss about it. However, Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang remained unmoved and still stood in place, seemingly prepared to kill Gui Zhu if he made the slightest move. "Don't be rude." A buzzing sound suddenly reverberated in the air, almost deafening. "The two of you, step back for now." Liu Yang heard this voice and retreated without hesitation while Xiao Xiao scratched his head, seemingly still at a loss. Seeing him like this, Liu Yang reached out and pulled him over to his side before tapping his head lightly. Xiao Xiao lowered his head aggrievedly. Gui Zhu's jaw dropped as he looked up at the mountain-like embodiment that was walking towards him step by step, each step causing the void to tremble. Gui Zhu couldn't help asking in surprise, "Just now, were you the one who spoke?" After saying so, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, Gui Zhu asked in shock, "You can speak? Why can't I speak?" The embodiment chuckled, his voice as loud as thunder as a smile appeared on his face that was very similar to Yang Kai's. "Supreme Elder, do you think this body is dead?" "You call me Supreme Elder?" Gui Zhu frowned. "So, you are Yang Kai. You can say so, I can represent the main body." The embodiment gently nodded before frowning again. "This body is too big, it's inconvenient to move around." "It's a bit big." Gui Zhu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Although he understood that this embodiment was Yang Kai, seeing such a big guy walking towards him step by step with such a colorful expression on his face still put a lot of pressure on Gui Zhu. "My main body just consumed too much energy and should be able to wake up in a while." Supreme Elder doesn't need to worry. The embodiment seemed to realize that his voice was a bit loud and deliberately lowered it. "What's there to worry about?" Gui Zhu shouted in his heart. He could naturally see the situation of Yang Kai's main body at a glance, but in today's battle, he had seen too many shocking things, so for a while, he had some difficulty digesting and thinking. "Boy, didn't your main body just break through to the Origin King realm? How did you suddenly reach the peak of the First Order? I think if your main body had another opportunity, It could even try to break through to the second order, Gui Zhu said indignantly. Gui Zhu asked indignantly. He had stayed on the floating continent for 2,000 years before breaking through to the Origin King realm by chance. After that, he had not made any progress for 500 years until he left the floating continent and regained his physical and mental freedom. Yang Kai had actually reached the peak of the First Order in just a few months. Gui Zhu couldn't help but sigh in his heart about the unfairness of the heavens. My main body's situation has something to do with me. The embodiment finally moved in front of Gui Zhu, sat down cross-legged, and looked down at him, stretching out a thick finger and pointing to itself. It's because of my birth. That's why my main body was able to break through after breaking through. Gui Zhu's brow furrowed deeply as he muttered, how profound. Haha, let's put it this way, my main body and I are bound together, and my strength can be fed back to my main body. This old master understands. Gui Zhu rubbed his sore neck. However, your embodiment is a bit strange. How do you cultivate it? This was what interested Gui Zhu. External incarnations were things that only existed in legends, and he also wanted to cultivate one. If he could cultivate one in the future, his strength would definitely soar. If Supreme Elder wants to cultivate it, I can teach you. How could I accept that? Gui Zhu was overjoyed. Rubbing his hands, Gui Zhu said so, but there was no trace of embarrassment on his face. The embodiment chuckled and said, do you remember when you let my main body enter the space array on the floating continent to investigate? Gui Zhu suddenly looked embarrassed. It's all in the past, why bring that up? At that time, his attitude towards Yang Kai was not very friendly. At that time, my main body did not enter the space array. Instead, I used a wisp of my soul to enter. The embodiment looked at Gui Zhu with a smile. Gui Zhu said thoughtfully, you mean, yes, that wisp of soul is the current me. The embodiment nodded lightly. If you want to cultivate an embodiment, you must first cultivate a soul clone. When your soul clone is strong enough, you can find a suitable body and enter it to become the embodiment. So simple. Gui Zhu was surprised. It's that simple. The embodiment smiled slightly, however. Although it is simple, it may not be effective. What do you mean? Gui Zhu asked humbly. Not to mention that it is extremely difficult to find a suitable body. Even if one does find one, it may not be possible to successfully integrate the soul clone with the body. After all, this is somewhat similar to seizing another's body. Even if it succeeds, the embodiment will not be too strong, and for an existence like Supreme Elder, it probably won't be of much use. But yours? Gui Zhu was confused. Although he could not figure out the details of Yang Kai's embodiment, judging from the palm strike it had used to attack Zilong before, this embodiment's combat power was definitely not weaker than a second-order Origin King, possibly even higher. Mine is an exception. There are simply too many coincidences. The embodiment did not explain much. The embodiment was originally just the second golden stone mongoose and had not swallowed many ores, so it did not have much combat power. Yang Kai had also kept it hidden, but this time, after swallowing and refining the entire floating continent, its strength had improved by leaps and bounds. This kind of thing could not happen a second time. So, does Supreme Elder still want to study it? The embodiment asked. Gui Zhu hesitated. Cultivating an embodiment was bound to consume a lot of time and energy. After all, this secret technique was quite powerful, and the more powerful a secret technique was, the more difficult it was to cultivate. For this, was it really worth delaying his pursuit of the martial Dao? Forget it, I won't study it for the time being. If this old master wants to learn it in the future, he will come to you, Gui Zhu said after thinking for a while. He decided to wait until he broke through to the third-order Origin King realm before studying his embodiment. All right, the embodiment nodded. Ian, my main body is about to wake up, you can chat. Chapter 1817. Yang Kai woke up and put away Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang before glancing at the embodiment and accepting the information it was transmitting back to him, immediately understanding what the embodiment and Gui Zhu had been talking about just now. Nodding gently, Yang Kai formed a series of seals with his hands and sent out his huge divine sense to wrap up the embodiment. The next moment, The embodiment disappeared. Guizu's jaw dropped again as he pointed at Yang Kai with trembling fingers. You, how big is your space ring? It can even store your embodiment. He felt this was too incredible. The embodiment was a 300-meter-tall stone giant, yet it had disappeared into thin air. If it wasn't taken into Yang Kai's space ring, then what was it? Yang Kai smiled lightly. I didn't take it into my space ring, I sent it to another place. The place the embodiment went to was naturally the sealed world bead, and a space ring could not accommodate such an existence. Guizu patted his head and said with a bitter expression, this old master is a master, and there are not many things in this world that can move this old master, but with you, little brat. TSK, this old master's heart can't help but be stimulated from time to time. Everything he had seen and heard during this period of time had exceeded his understanding. Yang Kai laughed, you'll get used to being stimulated. This battle had indeed been very exciting, especially when Zilong had tried to self-destruct at the last moment. If not for the Emperor artifact in Yang Kai's hand, the Annihilation Thunder Bead, he would have likely fled with Guizu. Who could stop the self-detonation of a second-order Origin King? Only a single blow from the Annihilation Thunder Bead could completely destroy it. However, that blow had also directly drained Yang Kai of his strength. Although the effect was not bad, it was still too painful to use. Recalling the feeling of having no strength left in his body, the feeling of weakness, Kai Yang felt some lingering fear. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Let's see what we gained this time. Yang Kai changed the subject and stretched out his hand. 4 space rings appeared on his palm. These 4 space rings were all extremely high-end rings, and naturally belonged to the 4 people Yang Kai and Guizu had killed. Guizu's eyes also lit up when he saw this. He rubbed his hands in anticipation. He liked this kind of killing and robbing the most. Although he didn't do it many times, he gained a lot every time. What's more, of the 4 rings, 3 belonged to Origin Kings, and although the last belonged to an Origin returning Realm Master, Zidong was the young master of Purple Star, so how could his ring not be rich? Yang Kai casually picked up a ring and scanned it with his divine sense. His face suddenly sank, and he cursed, which bastard's ring is this? Why is there not a single good thing in it? So poor. What? Guizu was stunned for a moment before taking the ring from Yang Kai's hand and sweeping it with his divine sense. He also scolded, damn it, you're so poor and you still have the nerve to come out and mingle. Yang Kai didn't know who this ring belonged to, but there were only a few tens of thousands of saint crystals inside it, as well as some miscellaneous things that didn't seem to have much value at first glance. It's Shu Wei's aura, it looks like it belongs to that old dog. Guizu curled his lips disdainfully, he really deserves to die. How could they know? All the good things in Shu Wei's ring had been divided up by Zilong and Zidong, so it would be strange if there was anything that could catch their eye. Oh, this one's pretty good. Yang Kai checked another ring and was overjoyed. Obviously, it was rich in resources, so he tossed it to Guizu and said, Supreme Elder, take a look. If there's anything you need, take it yourself and give the rest to me. Sect Master is too generous, ha 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 ha, then this old master will accept. Guizu had always been alone. It was difficult to find any good cultivation materials, but now that there were so many good things in front of him, he couldn't help grabbing the ring and rummaging through its contents, grinning as he muttered, TSK, it turns out to be eternally gold star sand. This is good stuff. If used in artifact refining, it can definitely be used to refine Origin King grade artifacts. It is said that this thing can only be found in Galaxy Ridge. It seems this is Kong Fa's ring. Sigh, so many herbs, that old dog's harvest in the Severed World was not small. Don't touch these herbs, when we return to High Heaven Sect, I'll have someone refine them into pills for you, Yang Kai said casually. This old master knows, Guizu grinned. A moment later, Yang Kai tossed over another ring, and Guizu once again plundered it before returning the rest to Yang Kai. There's only one left, and it looks like it's Zilong's ring. I'm really looking forward to it. The Purple Star Sect's master should have many good things on him, right? Guizu wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth, his eyes flashing a green light. Yang Kai took a look and said with a strange expression, there are indeed many good things, but there's also this. Saying so, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and took out a round bowl-like artifact. This round bowl looked simple and unadorned, but it gave off an aura that made one's soul feel comfortable. Isn't this the thing Zilong summoned just now? Gui Zu's eyes widened as he looked at it. Good, it's actually refined from soul-nourishing wood. No wonder it can collect the souls of the dead. Purple Star really can't be underestimated. Yang Kai chuckled meaningfully and said lightly, after all, it's one of the top forces in star territory. If it didn't have some skill, it would have been destroyed long ago. Saying so, his eyes flashed and he poured a stream of pure spiritual energy into the soul-sustaining bowl as he shouted, "Come out." The next moment, a miserable howl sounded from the soul-sustaining bowl and an illusory figure appeared inside it. It was Zidong. Enduring the pain in his soul, he looked around blankly, but when he saw Yang Kai and Gui Zu grinning at him, his expression changed drastically. "Why is it you? If it's not us, who else could it be?" Gui Zu snorted, causing Zidong's soul avatar to tremble, as if it was about to collapse. "Where's my father? Where is my father?" Zidong shouted in a panic. He had been hiding inside the soul-sustaining bowl and thought that the next time he came out, his father would be rebuilding his body, but how could he have imagined he would see these two disgusting faces as soon as he came out? Zidong was so shocked that only one of his 3 souls was left, his heart turning cold. "Since we're safe and sound, what do you think happened to Zilong?" Yang Kai sneered. Zidong's complexion changed as he cried out in horror, "Impossible, that's impossible. My father is the sect master of Purple Star, a second-order origin king. There are only a few people in this world who can kill him, so it's absolutely impossible for the two of you to accomplish such a thing." As he spoke, his confidence seemed to be built up as he pointed at Yang Kai and shouted angrily, "Don't even think about lying to me." "Huh?" Yang Kai sneered, "Why would I lie to you? There's no benefit to it. Forget it, I don't want to waste time with you. Supreme Elder, your ghost banner should need nourishment from yin souls, right? I'll leave this boy to you." "Jie, no problem." Gui Zu grinned strangely as he took out his 10,000 soul banner, his a third-order origin returning realm cultivator. After refining him, this old master's 10,000 soul banner will be of great help. As he spoke, countless distorted faces appeared on the 10,000 soul banner, all of them roaring ferociously, as if they had smelled a delicious meal, all of them baring their fangs and claws at Zidong. Zidong was so frightened that his soul almost left his body as he hid behind the soul-sustaining bowl and shouted, "Don't kill me, don't kill me, I am Purple Star's young master. If you have something to say, we can discuss it. Whatever benefits you want, I can give you." "Boy, you're really stupid. What benefits can you give this old master now?" "Obediently enter this old master's 10,000 soul banner." Gui Zu coldly snorted, unmoved. "Star Emperor token." At that moment, Yang Kai suddenly shouted as a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. Taking out a token from Zilong's space ring, he examined it carefully before laughing. "It really is a Star Emperor token." Gui Zu looked at him in amazement. "Why are you so excited? Didn't this old master remember giving you a Star Emperor token back then? This one seems to have been unsealed long ago and is of no use to you." The joy on Yang Kai's face did not diminish as he glanced over at Gui Zu and said, "Supreme Elder may not know, but it is said that this Star Emperor token hides a great secret. If all 9 can be collected, this secret can be unraveled." "A great secret?" Gui Zu looked uninterested. "Can it allow this old master to reach the peak of the martial Dao?" Perhaps. A weak voice came. Yang Kai and Gui Zu stared at Zidong together. It was he who had just spoken. "What do you know?" Yang Kai looked at him seriously. This guy was Purple Star's young master, so perhaps he really did know some secrets about the Star Emperor token. Zidong calmed his mind and looked towards Gui Zu pleadingly. "Senior, can you put this artifact away first?" I'm scared." "Useless thing." Gui Zu coldly snorted before reaching out and putting away the 10,000 soul banner. Zidong fell back into the soul-sustaining bowl, wiped the non-existent cold sweat from his forehead, gasped for breath, and asked cautiously, "If I tell you, will you let me go?" "Supreme Elder, swallow him," Yang Kai shouted. "Of course." Gui Zhu summoned the 10,000 soul banner again. No, 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 no. I'll speak, please don't do anything. Zidong was on the verge of tears. Bastard. Yang Kai spat disdainfully. Hurry up and speak. Gui Zhu also threatened from the side, urging the 10,000 soul banner's aura from time to time to put pressure on Zidong. Zidong was on the verge of tears as he sobbed, "Woo woo, in fact, I don't know much, but I once heard my father and the other elders talking about the Star Emperor token. Woo woo woo, they said that if you collect all 9 pieces, you can see the secrets of the great emperors." The secrets of the great emperors. Yang Kai and Gui Zhu both trembled. Is that true? Yang Kai stared at Zidong intently. That's what I heard, and it is said that the great emperors themselves said this back then. You probably don't know this, but my Purple Star's ancestors had some interactions with the great emperors tens of thousands of years ago. Woo woo, that's all I know. Please don't hurt me, I don't want to die. Chapter 1818. With Gui Zhu's 10,000 soul banner waiting for him, Zidong didn't dare to conceal anything and immediately revealed everything he knew. Collecting all 9 Star Emperor tokens would allow one to peer into the secrets of the great emperors. Although this sounded mysterious, it held great appeal to every cultivator who pursued the martial Tao. Yang Kai frowned and pondered. Yang Inflammation had indeed told him that collecting all 9 Star Emperor tokens would trigger some kind of secret, but as for what that secret was, Yang Inflammation had not explained. This secret had made Yang Kai's heart itch. Yang Inflammation must have her reasons for not saying anything, so Yang Kai naturally wouldn't try to get to the bottom of this matter. However, now that he had 6 Star Emperor tokens in his hand, he wasn't far from collecting all 9. This might be the biggest secret in Star territory, so Yang Kai couldn't help being tempted. Even Gui Zhu fell silent after hearing this, his expression dignified. That's all I know. Can the two of you, let me go first? Zidong asked nervously as he observed their expressions. Let you go? Yang Kai coldly snorted, you're now a soul, your physical body has long since been destroyed. The only reason you haven't dissipated is because of this bowl artifact. If I let you go, where will you go? Zidong was dumbfounded when he heard this. He had just been thinking about escaping from these 2 hateful people, but he hadn't considered that in his current state, it was impossible for him to act alone. The soul-sustaining bowl was refined from soul-nourishing wood and had the effect of nourishing one's soul, so it couldn't withstand too much damage. If he really had to use the soul-sustaining bowl to travel through Star Territory, in less than half a day, he would be swallowed up by the Star Territory's violent storms. Considering all this, Zidong's entire soul body withered and his eyes dimmed as he muttered, "It's over, it's really over." Yang Kai signaled to Gui Zhu, who chuckled and said, "Since that's the case, this old master will find you a good place to go." Saying so, he began urging his 10,000 soul banner. A suction force suddenly came from the banner. It wanted to absorb Zidonglai's soul. "Don't!" Zidong was shocked and quickly shouted, "Don't swallow me." Although staying in the soul-sustaining bowl wasn't a good thing, it was definitely better than being devoured by the myriad soul banner. The souls on the banner had lost their minds and only knew how to kill. How could Zidong be willing to become such a thing? "Don't swallow me. Please don't devour me." Zidong struggled with all his might. However, he still could not resist the suction force from the myriad soul banner. "Little brat, don't resist, what's there to resist?" Gui Zhu snorted. "No. I don't want to go in there," Zidong shouted. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, he turned to Yang Kai and said, "Friend, if you are willing to let me go, I can give you Purple Star's Star Emperor token." "Wait." Yang Kai quickly raised his hand and motioned to Gui Zhu. Gui Zhu stretched out his hand and the 10,000 soul banner immediately quieted down. Yang Kai stared at Zidong and quickly asked, "What did you just say?" Zidong glanced over at Gui Zhu with lingering fear before saying, "I said I can give you Purple Star's Star Emperor token. My Purple Star also has a Star Emperor token, isn't this one?" Yang Kai raised the Star Emperor token in his hand. "Does your Purple Star have 2? "No," Zidong hurriedly shook his head. Zedong quickly shook his head. This Star Emperor token does not belong to my purple star. It originally belonged to Shu Wei, but I found it in the severed world and gave it to my father. Shu Wei also had this thing? Yang Kai was shocked. I heard him say he obtained it during his early years. Zedong explained weakly. So, your purple star really has a Star Emperor token? Yang Kai's face filled with joy. I can guarantee with my life that my words are true. Zedong quickly swore, fearing that Yang Kai would become impatient and kill him. You're already dead, what life do you have? Gui Zhu looked at him mockingly. Zedong wailed, I'm telling the truth. Please believe me. Ian, I believe you. Yang Kai nodded. Sect Master, you don't really want to collect all 9 Star Emperor tokens, do you? No one has been able to do this for tens of thousands of years. How many do you have now? Gui Zhu looked at Yang Kai puzzledly. If I said I had 6, would you believe me? Yang Kai looked at Gui Zhu seriously, and as he spoke, he stretched out his hand and placed the 6 Star Emperor tokens neatly in front of Gui Zhu. Sigh. Gui Zhu sucked in a breath of cold air as his heart shook violently. 6 of them are in my hands. Purple Star has 1, and as far as I know, Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce has 1. If we can obtain these 2, there will only be 1 left. Yang Kai licked his slightly hot lips. The last one is in Sword Union, Zedong whispered. Yang Kai turned his head to look at him. Zedong shrank his neck. I'm not lying to you. Although only a few people in the upper echelons of the 3 great forces know about this, I heard it from my father. This information is absolutely reliable. Yang Kai and Gui Zhu looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Of the 9 Star Emperor tokens scattered across Star's territory, 6 were in their hands, and the whereabouts of the remaining 3 were now known. It really was possible to collect all of them. Boy, you're quite useful. Yang Kai glanced at Zedong, the look of approval in his eyes encouraging Zedong as he quickly said, Don't swallow me into that thing. I can take you to Purple Star and retrieve that Star Emperor token. Take you to Purple Star so you can call for revenge? Yang Kai sneered. How could that be? I can only stay in this soul-sustaining bowl right now. How can I call for help? Zedong cried out in grievance, I just want to live. Yang Kai nodded gently. Tell me, where is your Purple Star's Star Emperor token? How can we retrieve it? Zedong calmed himself down and said, It doesn't matter if I tell you, because it's impossible for the 2 of you to obtain it. You need my guidance. My Purple Star's Star Emperor token is stored in a secret room, and the key to that secret room is in my father's space ring. Only I know how to open it. Speaking of this, Zedong suddenly seemed to realize something and panicked. Don't force me, even if I tell you how to open it, you still need me to lead the way to that secret room. Don't worry, as long as you cooperate, I promise I won't hurt you. Yang Kai smiled warmly. If this matter is successful, it's not impossible for me to let you go. Don't lie to me, Zedong said dejectedly. Zedong hung his head dejectedly. You killed my father, how could you possibly let me go? I only beg you not to let my soul scatter. Yang Kai stared blankly for a moment before chuckling. Little brat, you've become smarter. Since you've made things clear, I can give you a guarantee. I may not let you go, but as long as you cooperate obediently, I will never kill you. Do I have the right to refuse? Zedong smiled bitterly. I like to cooperate with smart people. Yang Kai nodded with satisfaction before rummaging through Zilong's space ring and finding a golden key, taking it out and asking, Is this the key to open the secret room? When you really reach Purple Star's home star, call me out and I'll tell you how to get in. I'm tired, so I need to rest for a while. Saying so, Zedong's figure gradually faded, apparently hiding inside the soul-sustaining bowl. Yang Kai put away the key and the soul-sustaining bowl and began to think. Sect Master, this matter really has a lot of potential. Gui Zhu suddenly became interested. Gui Zhu suddenly became interested in this matter. The reason why he didn't care before was mainly because collecting all the Star Emperor tokens was too difficult, but now that he saw hope, he couldn't help feeling a little excited. With this little brat's help, obtaining Purple Star's Star Emperor tokens won't be difficult. As for Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce's token, With your relationship with that little girl, it won't be difficult for her to take it out. That little girl is the future successor of Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce, but Sword Union's token. I've met Jiu Jian Xin once, maybe we can start with him. Yang Kai said thoughtfully, Star Emperor tokens are precious, but everything has a price. As long as I can offer a price, Sword Union may be willing to sell them. Then shall we go to Purple Star now? Gui Zhu asked impatiently. He also wanted to know what would happen after collecting all 9 Star Emperor tokens. There's no rush. This matter can't be rushed. I need to return to my homeland first, then return to the sect. After everything is settled, it won't be too late to deal with this matter. All right, I'll listen to you. In any case, this old master has been homeless, so I'll follow you from now on, Gui Zhu grinned. In Zilong's space ring, in addition to the Star Emperor token and the Golden Key, there were many precious treasures he had found in the Severed World, as well as his own huge reserves. The space ring of Purple Star's sect master was simply a treasure trove, especially the shattering Void Shuttle. Although it had some flaws in its refinement, it was a good choice for traveling. Yang Kai spent a few days refining it slightly before entering it with Gui Zhu. After determining the direction, he rushed towards Tongxian Realm. The reason why Yang Kai wanted to return to Tongxian Realm was very simple. He wanted to arrange a cross-cultivation star space array in his homeland and connect it to Shadowed Star. This way, it would be very easy for him to return to his homeland in the future. He only needed to go through a few ultra-long-distance cross-cultivation star territory transmissions to reach his homeland. Only he could do such a thing. The chaotic abyss was not far from Tongxian Realm. In the past, Yang Kai had only needed to fly for a year and a half to reach the chaotic abyss with his Saint Realm cultivation. Now that he was using the shattering Void Shuttle, it only took him 2 months to arrive on Tongxian Realm. This is your homeland. After Gui Zhu arrived on Tongxian Realm, his brow furrowed. Isn't the world energy here too thin? How did you manage to cultivate in such a place? He could never have imagined that the homeland of such a monstrous genius like Yang Kai was actually such a small continent. He had originally thought that Kai Yang's homeland would be a place full of world energy, filled with birds and fragrant flowers. Chapter 18-19. Originally, the world energy in this place was even thinner. Yang Kai smiled faintly as he carefully sensed the surroundings, his brow furrowing slightly. What's wrong? Gui Zhu asked, seeing his strange expression. It shouldn't be. Yang Kai showed a hint of suspicion on his face. The world energy of this continent shouldn't be so thin now. After so long, it should have become much richer. The reason why Tongxian Realm's world energy was thin in the past was because of the great demon god's seal, which isolated this cultivation star from its territory, preventing it from receiving the infusion of world energy from outside. The second reason was because this cultivation star's star source was declining. However, after Little Senior Sister refined the star source and became the Star Master of Tongxian Realm, she should have caused some changes here. The stronger Little Senior Sister became, the more Tongxian Realm would receive. After such a long time, it was impossible for Tongxian Realm's world energy to be so thin. This place isn't some spirit mountain or great river. It might be that the world energy here is lacking. Gui Zhu glanced at the surrounding terrain and said casually. Yang Kai gently nodded, agreeing with his point of view. Let's go back to my former sect. Yang Kai called out, identified the direction, and rushed towards Nine Heavens Holy Land with Gui Zhu. He decided to arrange the cross-cultivation star space array in Nine Heavens Holy Land. There was a natural spirit array where the 9 peaks converged. It was one of the few places in Tongxian Realm with world energy. With his current means, he only needed to arrange a barrier nearby to conceal the existence of the space array. He believed that with the level of the cultivator in Tongxian Realm, even if he gave them 10,000 years, they wouldn't be able to break it. 3 to 5 days passed in a flash. Yang Kai and Gui Zhu, who were flying, both frowned slightly, looking down from time to time. Elder, did you find anything wrong? Yang Kai asked in a deep voice. The world energy of your homeland is leaking very seriously, like a punctured balloon, leaking air everywhere. You felt it too. Yang Kai's face darkened. When he noticed that Tongxian realm's world energy was thin before, Yang Kai felt that something was wrong. However, the place where he landed at that time was not a place where the world energy was abundant, so Yang Kai did not care. However, after flying for 3 to 5 days, there was no place with abundant spirit chi at all. No matter if it was a towering mountain. Even the flowing rivers seemed lifeless. This discovery caused his heart to sink. There were only 2 possibilities for such a situation to occur. The first possibility was that something had happened to Tongxian realm itself, and the second possibility was that Star Master Xia Ningqiang had met with an accident. No matter which possibility it was extremely disadvantageous for the little senior sister. Yang Kai suddenly regretted coming here and couldn't wait to return to Shadowed Star. Let's go and see if our little senior sister is all right. However, on second thought, his little senior sister was extremely safe in High Heaven sect, so there shouldn't be any problems. So, did something happen to this continent? But what could make the entire continent seem so lifeless? The world energy that was not rich in the first place was getting thinner and thinner. What the hell are those guys doing down there? Gui Zhu suddenly discovered something and pointed down. Kai Yang immediately came to a halt. Looking down from a high altitude, there was a huge valley below, and in that valley, there was a bright 6-point star-shaped spirit array in operation. Around this embodiment, there were countless cultivators. Each of them was making hand seals, struggling to maintain the operation of the spirit array. From time to time, a cultivator could not hold on and fell down, but someone else would immediately take his place. Around the spirit array, there were some cultivator in black clothes who looked on coldly and indifferently, occasionally shouting and even beating people up. Each of these black-clothed people had a surging aura, but they did not participate in maintaining the operation of the spirit array. Instead, they seemed to be supervising it. Origin returning realm? Yang Kai raised his brow and said in amazement, how is that possible? How could there be origin returning realm masters here? Since ancient times, the most powerful cultivator born in Tongxian realm was the great demon god, but even the great demon god had only touched upon the mysteries of the Saint King realm. After him, the peak cultivator in Tongxian realm was the Saint realm. The little senior sister refined the source of the stars and coincidentally broke through to the origin returning realm. But now, Yang Kai actually noticed the auras of 2 origin returning realm cultivator in this valley. Although they were only first-order cultivators, there was no doubt that they were origin returning realm masters. There were no origin returning realm masters in your homeland before? Gui Zhu asked. In the past, the strongest was only a third-order saint. If that's the case, then they are outsiders. Gui Zhu pointed down and said, and look at the spirit array down there, it seems to be swallowing the surrounding world energy. They seem to be using this spirit array to refine something. Outsiders. Yang Kai's eyes flashed with a murderous light, courting death. At this moment, he suddenly understood. The reason why Tongxian realm had been safe and sound in the past and had not been invaded by the masters of Star Territory was entirely because of the barrier arranged by the great demon god. The great demon god was a genius and had arranged a barrier based on the foundation of Tongxian realm, allowing the entire cultivation star to escape from Star Territory. However, his barrier was eventually broken by Yang Kai, allowing Tongxian realm to reintegrate into Star Territory. Several dozen years later, some masters from Star Territory finally discovered the existence of Tongxian realm and invaded it. Yang Kai had left Tongxian realm in the past to find Su Yang and to pursue a higher martial Dao, lest his homeland was invaded and he was powerless to resist. The invasion of the bone race in the past was the best example. If it were not for the great demon god's all-seeing eyes, this continent would have been enslaved long ago. And now, this kind of thing was happening again. The spirit array arranged by the people below was extracting the world energy of Tongxian realm, which was equivalent to killing Xia Ningqiang's cultivation path. Yang Kai suddenly burned with anger and his body fell down like a meteor, wrapped in endless cold qi. At least 1,000 people had gathered in the valley below. More than 90% of the cultivators' faces were filled with resentment and unwillingness. But under the threat of death, they had no choice but to participate in maintaining the operation of the spirit array. They were suffering unspeakably, but they did not dare to resist because those who resisted were all killed by the men in black. The origins of these people were unknown, but each one of them had amazing strength, not something the cultivator of Tongxian realm could resist. There were less than 10 people in black, all of them standing with their hands behind their backs. Only a young man was sitting on an armchair. Next to him were 2 beautiful girls serving him attentively. It was unknown where these 2 girls came from, but when they served him, their faces were filled with fear and trepidation, as if they were afraid of being punished if they made a mistake. The young man was holding a simple teapot in his hand, his eyes half squinted, looking leisurely, but from time to time, rays of light would burst out from his eyes. Among the 1,000 enslaved people, they were constantly circulating. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he stretched out his finger, pointing in a direction, "Bring that woman here." As soon as he said this, the 2 girls standing beside him trembled, revealing a look of panic. Looking at each other, their beautiful eyes were filled with worry. The young man observed their expressions and glanced sideways at the 2 maids, coldly snorting, "It seems that you know something." The 2 girls were shocked and knelt on the ground. Their delicate bodies trembled, not daring to say a word. That woman deliberately wore loose clothes and smeared dust on her face. Is she trying to hide her figure and appearance? But, does she think that she can escape from this young master's eyes? This young master has seen countless women, so he can tell whether they are the best at a glance. Looking at you, that woman must have an extraordinary status in your shrouded heaven mansion. Otherwise, what are you worried about? The young man spoke with assurance, causing cold sweat to drip down the 2 girls' foreheads. One of the girls mustered up her courage and said, "Young master, that woman is ugly and unbearable to look at." "Young master, don't worry about her. Can't you let this servant serve you well?" While speaking, she squeezed out a charming smile. Because of fear, her smile was slightly stiff, but it made her look even more pitiful. A lewd smile appeared at the corner of the young man's mouth. He stretched out his hand and hooked the girl's chin. The girl didn't dare to move. *pa. The young man slapped her, sending her flying far away with a miserable cry. "Does this young master need you to tell me what to do?" The young man snorted coldly with a displeased look on his face. Then, he looked at the other girl kneeling in front of him with a smile and said indifferently, "You will be dead before you can do anything." The second girl's delicate body trembled, and the power she had secretly gathered suddenly collapsed. She didn't dare to make any rash moves. She understood that the difference in strength between them and this young man was too big. Otherwise, the entire shrouded heaven mansion wouldn't have been exterminated and enslaved without any resistance. A look of despair appeared in her beautiful eyes. At this moment, the woman who was maintaining the operation of the array was brought to the young man by a black-clothed man. The woman wore loose clothes and her face was a mess. It was impossible to tell whether she was beautiful or had a good figure. However, her eyes were extremely bright and lively, as if they could speak. They were eye-catching. "Let me go, you bastards." The woman struggled endlessly. But how could she break free from the Saint King realm shackles of the black-clothed man with her transcendent realm cultivation? The young man looked at the woman with a smile, carefully staring at her face and moving his gaze over her body. His invasive gaze made the woman feel uncomfortable. She couldn't help but grit her teeth and glare at him. "Good, very good." The young man laughed. "Finally, I found someone who could catch this young master's eye. Do you want to know why this young master has his eyes on you?" The woman didn't say anything, but the anger in her beautiful eyes was almost tangible. The young man didn't care and said indifferently, "Because your companions were stupid and betrayed you. Their cultivation is obviously higher than yours, but they were very respectful to you. If I'm not wrong, your position in the shrouded heaven mansion shouldn't be low, right? Or perhaps the daughter of your mansion master." His voice wasn't loud, but it reached everyone's ears. It immediately made the group of experts from the shrouded heaven mansion feel ashamed and angry. They never thought that it was because of their attitude towards the young lady that caused her to be targeted by this bastard. If they had known this, how could they not be more careful? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.